Hospital port as pride and dignity. Stop the New World Order. Welcome to Panro TV and welcome to the UFO Disclosure 2024. It's the day of the big hearing, guys. That's right. At the time of speaking, it is now about 2.5 hours till the hearing, or just over 2.5 hours till the hearing. And I'll just show you exactly where it's going to be. So I'll just go to screen share and you'll see here. This is the YouTube video, which is going to stream it live. It says here Wednesday, the 13th of November, 2024, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time, which is 4:30. It is 4:30 p.m. my time here in the UK, GMT, which is very convenient. I've literally just finished work. I would normally be finishing work. I've actually finished a bit early today, which is really cool. And it's the joint subcommittee hearing on unidentified anomalous phenomena exposing the truth. Well, that remains to be seen. But anyway, I've already given it a little bit of a like because I'm pleased this is happening. It's on the GOP Oversight channel, which I don't subscribe to because this is literally the only video of theirs I'm actually going to watch. It was actually a different committee last time, if I remember rightly. I think it was the, what's it called? It was called the in something in House Intelligence and something. Yes, it was the House Intelligence and Defense something or other hearing committee. This is the Committee on Oversight and Accountability, and it says our mission is to ensure the efficiency, effectiveness, and accountability of the federal government and its agencies. All right, we'll see about that. There's one here on the board. There's lots of other subjects they cover. There's one on the border crisis, accomplishments for the 118th Congress, Fox News, Biden-Harris fraud, Coma and See, you could spend your whole life going through various things here. And this is the interesting one here, just unidentified anomalous phenomena exposing the truth. And there we are. And this is the location if you want to get there, 2154 Rayburn House office building, which is the committee hearing room. And if I catch the bus, I might just get there on time. And it's the cyber security, information technology and government innovation, national security, the border and foreign affairs. That's the people. And this is very interesting because it's going to be chaired by Nancy Mace, who's the representative for, I think it's South Carolina. It's the first congressional district of South Carolina, I believe. And look at the witness list is very interesting indeed. I'll say more about those shortly, but these names will be very familiar to many of you. Dr. Tim Gallaudet, who he was actually in Darcy Weir's latest documentary on USOs, and of course Luis Elizondo, Michael Golds, this is and former NASA employee, quite new on the scene, and Michael Shellenberger there. He's a journalist, founder of Public. You may have, of course, we discussed him in the previous video, didn't we? Because of the previous UFO Disclosure video, because he was the one who brought us the details of Immaculate Constellation. So this is exciting. And now the question is, we don't know yet what they're going to say, whether it's going to be any better or worse than the hearing last year. That remains to be seen. It really does. But anyway, at times like this, where can you turn? I think there is only one place really you can actually go for counsel, for advice, and for solace, and it is the one and only Mr. Nick Pope. Let's see what his royal popeness has to say about this, shall we? Now, I'll probably get a third-party copyright strike for this, but it'll be worth it. Let's hear what he says. So, take it away, Nick.
Joining me now, I have Nick Pope.
That's the guy. He subbed to me with Joe Khalil. He actually subbed to me. He followed me on Twitter for a while. Anyway, so Joe, if you're watching, mate, thanks for being part of News Nation. Anyway, take it away. God, he's fallen asleep. Oh dear. Anyway, let's wake him up. Nick, wake up.
Who investigated UFOs for the UK Ministry of Defence. Nick, welcome back to the show. Big hearing today. I feel like this is your Super Bowl, right? You live for these kind of moments. What are you hoping for, Nick?
Yeah, I should say so do I. I live for these kinds of moments as well, I must admit, yeah.
Yes, absolutely, Marty. Very exciting day. Very psyched for this. I think we're going to learn a lot. I don't think we're not going to get a smoking gun here, but we are going to get information that I think will shock Congress and will.
That's good, because whenever Nick says we are going to get a smoking gun, we never do. So maybe because he said we aren't, we will.
Shock the public, and rightly so. As Joe said, this is absolutely a defense and national security issue, and we know from the written statements that these witnesses have already submitted to Congress.
By the way, I know these videos and images, these stills have been called into question by Mick West and many others. I'm not going to get into a debate right now about their validity. Well, that's something I cover on other videos and articles.
That they're going to talk quite openly about, quote, non-human intelligence, unquote, and an associated disinformation campaign to keep this from Congress and the public.
Mm-hmm. So you don't...
Yes, and certain people I would nominate have actually contributed to that, Nick. I'm not going to name names right now, but they are, I think, individuals you're familiar with.
I don't think we're going to learn anything that's going to just blow the lid right off this story.
I don't think so, and the reason for that, of course, is this is an open public hearing, and
to be fair enough, he's probably right about this. I mean, I know I was sort of joking earlier on, but you know, just maybe, the rules will be broken at this once. But he's probably right. Well, I'll let him explain it, then I'll say what I think.
Of course, when News Nation first covered the story of David Grush, the whistleblower who came forward last year, it was noticeable when he testified that just as you got tantalizingly close to some of the really sensitive bits, he fell back on the statement that he could only really discuss certain things in a secure, compartmented information facility, in other words, a secure room. So, but that in itself...
Yeah, and then people gave him a really hard time for that. I mean, as they have done Elizondo. As I said to Jon Stewart last night, you know, I feel sorry for these guys because they're doing what they can. I mean, they've been accused, oh, well, they just come in and say any old thing, and then they sell a book, and oh dear, but they never give the evidence. They never give the evidence, do they? Well, they are telling people what they know within the confines of the rules under which they currently have to operate. What do you expect them to do? Wheel in a body and spend the rest of their life in jail? Come off it. Give them a chance, big guys. Get real.
Tells you that you're getting close. So watch for those no comments in particular.
Yeah, and I want to talk about, you know, 3 of the 4 witnesses.
We will have them saying, well, we can't talk about it here. We'll go into the skiff and we'll talk about it there. A lot of discussions have happened in the skiffs, which... I mean, when Gallaudet, when Moskowitz and what's her name? Luna, Anna Paulina Lula, when those two came out of the skiff last time, I covered this in a previous video, you could tell straight away, I'm still on, aren't I? You could tell instantly, absolutely instantly that something big had been mentioned in there, and they were flushed. Their faces were flushed, and they were like, obviously they know very well that because they know the rules inside the skiff as well, and they can't talk about what was actually discussed. They certainly can't record it or film it or anything like that. I mean, skiffs are especially designed to avoid this sort of thing. I mean, have you seen what a skiff is? Have you seen? Some of you might not know what it is. Special compartmented information facilities, Nick said. Here we go. Here's a diagram of one. It's basically a locked door. Some of them. This is sort of like one with this is a portable skiff. You can have them inside buildings as well. You can actually have them installed inside buildings. But basically, this is a good diagram here. Locked door. The walls are specially designed to avoid. Basically, there's no windows at all. Walls with like air gaps in between, with sensors and noise dampeners and things like that. Everything inside the room is designed to prevent eavesdropping. So that's, I mean, as I said, sometimes they're portable things here like this. It seems to be adapted from a shipping container. Others are installed into buildings. They very often look quite normal inside, as you see here. They're often quite, they're often like done up like committee rooms, or you have here a military command center. But they are they're specially designed so that people can have private conversations. Nothing gets recorded, and no one can listen in. No one can eavesdrop. That's what a skiff is, guys. That's what a skiff is.
Witnesses who are testifying today in front of Congress, they've shared their accounts here on News Nation, confirming their claims that...
Here they are, yeah. I'm curious. I'll go into some more detail about these people in a little while.
UAPs do, in fact, exist. Nick, take a quick listen, and I'll talk to you on the other side.
You must appreciate people watching this, hearing...
Some of those ships are so big that they can't be moved. Sorry, there's old Lou.
You talking about aliens, recovered craft, recovered bodies. It sounds crazy.
It's not crazy, oh, is it? That's the whole point. Anyone like me who's been like I suppose UFO, I hesitate to use the word obsessive, enthusiast, shall we say, knows this already. We've just been waiting for people in the position of government like this. And Lou was never a political appointee, but he was about as high as you could get in the civil service without being a political appointee. So he's very, very highly placed indeed.
Well, as I've said before, I'm not saying it doesn't sound crazy. What I'm saying is it's real.
The American public has a right to know.
Now there is Admiral Gallaudet, and who specialised in underwater and maritime sightings. And what he said in Darcy Weir's documentary about this, but there was a very long interview with him. It's very interesting indeed.
A new nature of reality we know, and that the Defense Department and the intelligence community has realized and has evidence of. That's not fair to the American public.
It's up to journalists like you and me and these brave whistleblowers to and the public to demand that Congress act.
Michael Shellenberger was the subject of the last UFO disclosure video I did, which was Immaculate Constellation. He was him who brought this to us, and I did an entire video about it.
Act and do its job.
Yeah, so Nick, there's been a common theme here, and that is that the American public deserves answers. What's it going to take for that to finally happen?
Well, I think it's going to take Congress keeping the pressure on this. But also, of course, the important thing is now with a second Trump term coming up, and with President Trump having said that he will disclose information, for example, that's been held back on the JFK files. And he was also asked about information on UAP. And so early in his second term, I think the president might join the fray, and that would really push it over the line, because then it becomes an order from the commander-in-chief.
Yeah, I should interrupt Nick at this point and make a big long point about this, because this was basically what was taken from the Schumer amendment, which was the executive oversight clause was taken. Yet, honestly, if the election result last week had gone the other way, and that Kamala Harris had won, I would take much less interest in this particular event. I think the fact that Americans have gone through this transformation over the last couple of weeks, at the time of speaking, Trump, it looks like Trump may well take the House. I haven't checked on that, but he may well. Basically, he's got a clean sweep: Senate, court, popular vote, and of course the presidency, and by very decisive margin. And he's very, very close to the line of getting the House of Representatives as well. So Americans know this. This Congress is out at the moment. They're not sitting. They'll be back in the new year to ratify the new government. There's been a lot of people need to be sworn in. There's the January the 6th. There's the January the 6th event in Congress, which was interrupted. All that has to be done, of course, in January, and they'll be back. Until then, they're off. They're not having a holiday. They're busy in their districts. However, they have come back to take part in this committee, those who are on the committee. Nancy Mace, there's other people are going to be there. I think NTG is going to be there, which is really cool. Marjorie Taylor Greene, of course, is someone I admire a lot. And anyone else who might be involved, we'll find out. I think Jerry Moskowitz is going to be there. I heard. I did watch a couple of hearings. I can't remember all the names of the people that are going to be there, but I watched a couple of shows and podcasts. That UFO podcast did a preview. UFO Jesus has just done one, vetted, etc. I think Jerry Moskowitz is going to be there. MTG. Who else? What's his name's going to be there? Of course, Tim Burchett is going to be there. Of course. I mean, you know, wild horses couldn't keep him away from something like this. He's a hero in my view. But they're all going to be on that committee. And they'll be the ones asking the questions of the witnesses. It's going to be like the one last year. There'll be a panel of witnesses, and they'll have to answer questions put to them by the panel, by the panel of Congress people on the committee. So that's how it's going to be. It's going to be a conversation along those lines. So we should be used to this now. So it's pretty much all the same. So anyway, I'll just let Nick finish. So basically, what I'm saying is that the point I was making is that America's this is just started a fresh new era now, And that is going to influence what happens today. I think it's going to influence what's going to happen today because people will know even things that President-elect Trump hasn't said publicly that he will have said privately to many of these people, which means they'll be asking different questions and the panel will be given different answers to what would have happened otherwise if the establishment had won this election. So anyway, let's just finish off Mr. Pope and what he has to say here. I'll put it on screen share just a moment. There we go.
Declassify and release this to the public.
Yeah, well, you stole my last question, Nick, and that was, are you getting any signals that soon to be, again, President Trump will peel back the curtain in any sort of new kind of way? Nick Pope, I know you'll be watching. We'll debrief with you soon on what we get. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching, everybody.
Right,
Go to join in.
So that's kind of the end of it. And so we'll look a bit more, what more's going on because other people have actually said more. What's this? Is this? I'm looking for. Is this? No. This is. Here it is. Is this it? Yeah, this is it. This is the Black Vault. Good old John Greenwald Jr. Very, very interesting guy. This is the hearing memo here. I don't know if I can expand this. Probably not. Maybe can I expand it? No. How do I? Right. To members of the subcommittee on cybersecurity. This is the committee. Subcommittee on Cybersecurity, Information Technology and Government Innovation, and Subcommittee on National Security, the Border and Foreign Affairs. Right. As from the committee staff about the particular hearing we're going to. On Wednesday, November the 13th, 2024, at 11:30 a.m. ET, in the building I've talked about, the subcommittees, which I've just mentioned, will jointly conduct a hearing titled Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena, Exposing the Truth. It's not aerial anymore, it's anomalous. Background. The hearing follows an unidentified anomalous phenomena hearing held last summer by the Subcommittee on etc. That's it, the Subcommittee on National Security, Border and Foreign Affairs. That was the one last year. It will explore continued concerns about disclosure of UAP-related programs and information held by federal agencies. It will explore transparency issues surrounding the Department of Defense and intelligence community, including its disclosure of spending information and its policies and procedures regarding classification and declassification. The hearing will also examine the work of the DoD's congressionally mandated All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. All right, so it's similar to the one last year. Uses a lot of very positive language, very encouraging. It has words like transparency issues, disclosure of spending information, policies and procedure regarding classification and declassification. That's an encouraging thing in the first paragraph. 2. Hearing purposes. The hearing will broadly examine issues related to overclassification of information, along with the reluctance to declassify information where appropriate. Again, very good. It will attempt to shed further light on recent journalistic accounts concerning secret federal research programs on UAPs not disclosed to the American public. Right, that's what Shellenberger is doing there. It's about Immaculate Constellation and probably the Kona Blue documents as well. So witnesses to be determined. Well, we know what they are now. And here we have the hearing notice again. This is Joint Subcommittee hearing notice. I think this is basically saying the same thing from James Comer. Isn't he is he the majority leader or minority leader? I can't remember. And it's just giving the details here. If any members would like to submit documents, exhibit, or other material, etc., etc. Yeah, good. And what's this here? Michael, oh right, this is the witness statements. If I can get them, and this basically is. This is John's. He set up a page specially for this. And he says here, the Black Vault has launched a dedicated page to document all materials related to the upcoming congressional hearing on unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAPs, scheduled at this date. The joint hearing titled Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena, Exposing the Truth will be led by Chairwoman Nancy Mace and Glenn Grothman from the subcommittees on cybersecurity, etc. This session marks the second UAP-focused hearing by Congress. All right, there have been others. There's one by the Senate. There was another by, oh God, there was the other one. happened before, but that wasn't the Congress. That was somebody else. There was one with Kirsten Gillibrand. That was the Senate. But this is basically the second follow-up from the one last year. It's taken. That was last July. I know because I went to the Glastonbury Symposium. God, it takes so long. It'll address the Department of Defense's reluctance to declassify information. The hearing will include testimony from witnesses: Navy Rear Admiral Dr. Tim Gallaudet, former DoD official Luis Elizondo, former NASA Associate Administrator Michael Gold, and journalist Michael Shellenberger. Michael Gold is quite a new figure here. He hasn't really said much, but he has come out and he's been interviewed by a few people since. So I'm keen to hear what he has to say, because we all remember that hearing with old. Do you remember the old with the old guy, whatever his name was, the head of NASA, and where he let slip some things about the classified annex? That was very, very interesting, wasn't it? Yeah. Anyway, where are we going now? Okay. Right. I'll go back to screen share here. And here we have what's this? Reload document. This, I think, here we are. This is the witness testimony of Luis Elizondo. And it is basically the preliminaries here. Greetings, Chairwoman Mace, Chairman Grothman, ranking members Connolly and Garcia. That's it, Garcia. He's going to be there too. Yeah. And members of the committee. It's my honor and privilege to testify before you on the issue of UAP, etc., on behalf of the brave men and women in uniform and across the intelligence community, as well as my fellow Americans who've waited this day. Thank you for your leadership on this important matter. Let me be clear. UAP are real, advanced technologies not made by our government or any government, are monitoring sensitive military installations around the globe. Right, that's a great, well done, Louis, because Luis Elizondo has begun with that very, very unequivocal statement. In other words, aliens exist and they're behind the UFOs. He continues. Furthermore, the US is in possession of UAP technologies, as are some of our adversaries, and I believe we're in the midst of a multi-decade secretive arms race, once funded by misallocated taxpayer dollars and hidden from our elected representatives and oversight bodies. That's correct. That's correct, guys. You see, the arms race indicates that other countries have done this as well, which I've often said. Misallocated taxpayers' dollars refers to the black budget. Now, the way this is done is by, I suppose, if any non-state actor did this, they'd be arrested for embezzling. But it's done through lots of tricks, which Michael Schratt, actually, at Contacts in the Desert, mentioned. Do you remember my video, Ben in the Desert, where I described this, and I saw his speech? They buy sort of cheap. They buy very, very cheap. They buy orders of multiple items of very, very cheap tools and consumables like light bulbs, screws, spanners, hammers, and things like that. And they overcharge grossly for them. Like, there's ridiculous things like a little 30-watt light bulb that costs like $10,000 and things like that. Why does it cost that much? Because then they can charge the taxpayer that money and then siphon off the difference. I mean, it's like, imagine a shop where you walked in there and the shopkeeper would just charge you like £1,000 for a packet of crisps. That shop would go out of business very soon, quickly, wouldn't it? However, what if that shop had an armed militia that forced you to go into the shop and at gunpoint purchase their goods? That's basically what the government is. Oh, I'll carry on here. You don't need to share screen, do we? No, you've seen it. He carries on. For many years, I was entrusted with protecting some of our nation's most sensitive programs. In my last position, I managed a special access program on behalf of the White House and the National Security Council. That must refer to ORSAP. As such, I appreciate the need to protect certain sensitive intelligence and military information. I consider my oath to protect secrets as sacred and will always put the safety of the American people first. With that said, I also understand the consequences of excessive secrecy and stovepiping. Stovepiping is a term that I've heard him use many times, and it's what we would call compartmentalization. where only certain people in certain areas know what they do. They're all part of a team which is managed in an internecine way from a higher level. He carries on. Nowhere was this more apparent than in the aftermath of 9/11, which many of us remember all too well. Yeah, and Lou, unfortunately, doesn't have any. He doesn't seem to have any opinions relating to what really happened that day, which is different to the official story. I believe the America's greatness depends on three elements: a watchful Congress, a responsive executive branch, and an informed public. Over the last decade and a half, I learned that certain UAP programs were and are operating without these elements. Right. I'm not going to read everything. This is quite a long document, actually, and I don't really have time. I'm not going to read it all, possibly because he'll repeat a lot of it anyway in the statement. But he's also mentioned this on other interviews, which you probably said. But he said here, to fix these problems, I propose three principal actions. First, Congress and the President should create a single point of contact responsible for a whole-of-government approach to the UAP issue. Currently, the White House, CIA, NASA, and the Pentagon, Department of Energy, and others play a role, but no one seems to be in charge, leading to unchecked power and corruption. Well, again, now if Biden was still president, or Harris, I would say that's a waste of time, Lou. But now we have a president who can create this single point of contact responsible point. In other words, what was in the Schumer Amendment, that is executive oversight. Second, we need a national UAP strategy that will promote transparency and help restore the American public's trust at a time when the public's trust is at an all-time low. This strategy should include a whole-of-government approach, including the academic and scientific communities, the private sector, and our international partners and allies. Yeah. He doesn't detail what that strategy is, but I'm sure he will. Third, Congress should create a protected environment so whistleblowers desperate to do the right thing can come forward without fear. Yeah. As it currently stands, these whistleblowers suffer because of stigma, a code of silence, and concerns about retaliation. These whistleblowers should be encouraged to come forward in ways that protect them against any form of retaliation. That's very important, by the way, because if you remember from the previous hearing, Grush actually said, yeah, people have been killed over this. People have been murdered. There's been extrajudicial killings of individuals. Yeah. He continues. And for those who refuse to cooperate, it's up to all the members of this committee and other lawmakers to wield their subpoena power against hostile witnesses and prevent additional government funding to those UAP efforts that remain hidden from congressional oversight. Yeah. Yeah. In closing, we as Americans have never been afraid of a challenge. In fact, we thrive on them. Whether it's eradicating polio or going to the moon. Well, I won't go into that. We don't run from a challenge, we take it head on. To the incoming administration and Congress, I say to you, we need immediate public transparency, and this hearing is an important step on that journey. If we approach the UAP topic in the same way as Americans have met other challenges, we can restore our faith in our government institutions. Together, we can usher in a new era of accountable government and scientific discovery. I believe that we as Americans can handle the truth. And I also believe that the world deserves the truth. Thank you, esteemed members of Congress, for your time today. It's profoundly appreciated by many. Well, I like what he says at the end there, because he's absolutely right. I think Lou Elizondo is a decent man. I know it is very, very trendy these days. It's extremely fashionable to be anti-Elizondo. But I'm not one of those people. I'm content to be a square in this situation. All right. It's ironic, actually, that people, they're up against such opposition that we probably have only had a taster of. We've only had a hint about what really might be going on, and through stories we've heard through independent sources, if you're into ufology. But these Congress people have heard it for the first time in skiffs, probably, as well as in the hearings where Grush and the others have said, there's been actual violence done. There's been actual wet work, to use what the intelligence agencies call it, assassinations, people being silenced through their lives being taken. And all these keyboard warriors and internet pundits can say is, he's not providing the evidence. He's not providing the evidence. Praise the cash. Naming no names. please, this is what these people need, a chance. They really do need a chance, and I think I'm willing to give them one. Right, so that's Lou Elizondo. The others have made statements as well, again, which I don't have to necessarily read all of them. But Tim Gallaudet has made his own statement here, which I'll just quickly show you. It won't work. I'm trying to reload it. Oh, yeah. This is the written testimony of Tim Gallaudet. He talks about basically the things that he said in interviews about time on board aircraft carriers and things like that. Again, this is very, very long indeed. Oh, I can't go into detail about this, but you'll find out about it. Then Michael Gold, who's worth his weight in it, I'm sure. Again, we'll hear this. He'll probably read this out at the hearing. So yeah, but he has he's obviously taking a different. He's taking a different position to his. What's the name of the guy? I'm annoyed when I can't think of names. You can't always think of names. Here we go. Head of NASA, Senator somebody. Bill Nelson. That's it. Bill Nelson. You remember I covered Bill Nelson's testimony at the time when he did Bill Nelson did a big speech in which he let slip. Well, he's in the classified annex of the UAP report, the UAPTF report, and he let slip that there were like over 300 sightings, which was not actually in the covering document, the published covering document. It was in the classified annex, but that was very interesting. I noticed he hasn't done many speeches since, but obviously this guy Gold is taking a very, very different position. So good for him. Now, what's next? Let's have a look. I'm going through my notes here. I've had some. I won't actually share screen here because these are basically emails I've had from various people. But the New Paradigm Institute and MUFON are holding an event after this. It's happening. It says here, Washington, D.C., United States. MUFON, the New Paradigm Institute, that's Danny Sheehan's, announced an event set to start 30 minutes after the conclusion of the Wednesday hearing, which I've just told. The hearing, and it talks about the basics here. The hearing will be chaired by, again, and it gives the details of various people: Robert Garcia, Glenn Grothman, Nancy Mace, Gerald Connolly. And it says that the UAP Disclosure event will provide media representatives and the public an invaluable opportunity to hear directly from representatives of MUFON and NPI, two of the most influential civilian organizations committed to advancing UAP disclosure and the need to provide support for congressional disclosure efforts. And the speakers are going to be Danny Sheehan, Chief Counsel of the NPI, Ron James, Media Director for MUFON, David McDonald, Executive Director of MUFON, Stephen Bassett, yeah, go Steve, Executive Director of the Paradigm Research Group, Captain Robert Salas, the Nuclear Weapons Officer, Jim Garrison, no relation to the guy at the guy who sued the government over the Kennedy assassination, if you remember that story. He died long ago. But Jim Garrison he was the district, I think he was the Attorney General of Texas, or the district attorney of the area, and he sued the government over the Kennedy assassination. Yeah. The film JFK by Oliver Stone covers that in detail. So yeah, this is going to be at the Spirit of Justice Park, Lower House, D Park, South Capitol Street, and C Street Southwest, directly south of the Rayburn House Office building. Right. And that's actually got a hearing as well. We can have a quick look at that. Let's have a look at I can watch this. I won't necessarily be able to do it may be too long to do a video about this as well, but it's on this page here for MUFON. It's on MUFON's page here. So we'll check that out. I'll keep that open. So yeah, and so that's Danny Sheehan. The UAP Disclosure Fund is coming. Historic hearing in Congress. UAP Disclosure Fund Senate reception. Following the hearing, Senate reception for lawmakers, congressional staff, thought leaders, and the media. Senator Mike Rounds has sponsored the event. Speakers will include Dr. Tim Gallaudet, Louis Elizondo, and UAPDF. UAPTF, what's that? Someone called Yuan Feng, Chinese person, I expect, someone I haven't heard of. But that's another event happening, which will include some of the witnesses from the hearing. It's kind of like an after party. Then we have here, I have here something from the PRG, Steve's organization, which has a link to the Black Vault. And it says the UAP event following the House hearing announced by MUFON and the New Paradigm Institute. Basically, Steve here is advertising the same thing as Danny Sheehan was in his organization. Excuse me. And then the MUFON have sent this here, UAP Disclosure event following House oversight hearing. So I think I've just basically got multiple ads for the same event coming. And finally, Danny Sheehan said, this is the New Paradigm Institute's newsletter, and I do recommend subbing to this. It's completely free to sub to. And you just go to npi.org and you can sign up for it with your email. And this is Danny, who was actually in my video, Ben in the Desert, if you remember. I did interview, I did feature him briefly. Greetings, Ben. I'm sending this week's newsletter too early to ensure you're prepared for an extraordinary moment in history. Tomorrow, that's today, Wednesday, November the 13th, the House Oversight Committee will convene a public UFO UAP hearing that promises to deepen the conversation on transparency and accountability in the study of unidentified anomalous phenomena. Yeah, I mean, you may have noticed that the 18th of October event didn't. I know it led to. I know they had a little conference. It didn't actually lead to any kind of legal breakthrough that Danny hoped it would, because he said that after the Schumer amendment was repealed, it still had teeth, but unfortunately, that deadline expired on October the 18th, and nothing came of it, unless something's going on behind the scenes. This landmark event is a pivotal opportunity to witness government leaders address pressing questions about UAP and their implications. Continue reading to learn how this happens. The Pentagon's history of UAP investigators reveals a troubling legacy of secrecy and disinformation. Programs like ORSAP, the UAP Task Force, and the current ARROW are not known for their commitment to UAP/UFO transparency. In response, Congress has intensified demands for accountability. And it says here, this Wednesday, the House Oversight Committee will convene a historic hearing on the UAP, the second House hearing on UAP in just 2 years, and it promises critical testimony aimed at deepening congressional understanding of UAP transparency and identifying key areas for further investigation. NPI applauds the steadfast dedication of lawmakers committed to uncovering the truth. It gives a list of witnesses here and how to view. Don't miss your chance to tune in and participate in this critical dialogue. And it says here, it's assumed the hearing will be available for viewing on demand afterwards. I hope so, because I do want to run you through the recording. I might even OBS it just in case the recording is deleted or privatized. And then it advertises the post-hearing event, which has Danny is going to speak himself, Ron James, David McDonald, Steve Bassett, and someone called Julia Mossbridge, PhD, founder and director of the Mossbridge Institute. I've not heard of that. Yeah, so that's something I'm very, very much looking forward to. Yeah, and so that's about it. I think I'll just double check my notes and see if obviously I'll do some more. I will do some more discussion after the event, but right now I think that covers everything, except as I said, it was not certain when this first began. It was not certain whether these hearings would even happen, because there was attempts to cancel them, which is why it might be private. The recording might be privatized afterwards or deleted. So I'm going to have OBS running in the background so I can at least capture a recording of sorts. I mean, maybe I won't be able to show you all the video, but I'll show you some of it as sorts. It was actually Nancy Mace herself who was the driving force in making sure this went ahead, which indicates, following her, being on the committee last year, if you remember, she asked David Grush in particular some very, very interesting questions. She has been very committed, and she seems to have inspired and maybe, dare I say, radicalized over this matter, to have pressed home the need to have these hearings. Right, a couple of things are not going to happen. We're not going to have any talk of Nazca mummies. Luckily, that's not going to be an issue. So I'm not going to lament the whole thing in Mexico again. But I mean, the Mexico thing was not a complete waste of time. It would have been better if Jaime had not done that at that, did what he did at that particular time. I still think a lot of interesting things were said. If anything, it was better than the one in Washington. But the Skinwalker research team are not going to testify either. That's probably, maybe simply, I don't think it's because there's nothing to say about Skinwalker Ranch. I mean, the whole purpose of ORSAP was it was set up specifically for the Skinwalker Ranch issue. But this is how Elizondo got involved. He worked with Jim Lukatsky and then the establishment of ATIP, which is his own, it was kind of his own private project related to that. Now, I'm sure everyone wants to know this, and I won't be able to answer it right now. There's no way of knowing. But are we going to get disclosure today? Nick Pope says not. I'm tempted to say, well, because he's saying that, we will. But he's probably right. But it will be a step along the way. I mean, I've said before, probably the most likely disclosure we're going to get now is catastrophic disclosure. Now, that's not a term I like. It implies there's something bad happening. It's something awful. Catastrophic disclosure. Thunderclaps and lightning, tidal waves and volcanoes. Catastrophe. All catastrophic disclosure means literally. All it means, its literal meaning, is simply that information is passed to the public independently, to independent media, without any formal permission from the state actors who actually own that information, by somebody within the organizations that owns that information, acting independently. That's all it means. That's all it means. It doesn't mean catastrophe. It doesn't mean apocalypse, disaster. It just means that literally. In a sense, Larry Warren, what Larry Warren did with the Rancho and Forest incident was a form of catastrophic disclosure. And I don't think it's anything to fear. I think we should welcome it, actually. We should welcome catastrophic disclosure and not see it as something to lament should it happen, because really the government have had their chance. They've established a situation now. And I'm not talking about the people on the Congress today because they're good people. I'm talking about the two Mikes. I'm talking about Lockheed Martin and the people who blatantly funded the Mike's campaign. Mike Turner and the other guy. That's, I forgot who they were now. It's Senator Michael Turner and there's another Mike. I've discussed the detail in other videos. So it's basically their scuppering of the Schumer Amendment 2 years running that has made catastrophic disclosure almost certainly the only way forward now. And I say, bring it on. I might change my mind by the end of this particular hearing, but we'll see when the hearing actually happens. We'll see about that when the hearing actually happens. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to record it, and then we will go through it. I'll make some notes during the recording. I won't actually record. I won't actually make this video while I'm watching live. I'll just make notes while I'm watching it live. Then I'll go through it again on camera with you guys. So I've got time to have a little nap. I think I need one after work, and then we're going to watch. So let's go ahead and watch this particular video, and I'll see you at the other end, as Niall Murphy says. Hello, everyone. Hello. It's the morning after the night before. Yeah, in fact, it's 2 mornings after, or 2 afternoons. Yeah, for you, this is the next moment. For me, it's actually Friday. I don't know how many of you saw the post that I put up on YouTube. I was going to say Facebook, on YouTube here. I said here, because of the duration and complexity of today's US Congressional UFO hearing, I will not be able to complete my review today. I'll do it Friday. And I had some nice replies there, which I'll cover on my reply to comments videos. Well, Steve's back. Yes, Steve mumbling. But yeah, when I was watching it, I was going through it, and it was 2 hours, 26 minutes long altogether. Much longer than the previous hearings, and I realized, I'm not going to be able to do this evening, because it was by the time I finished watching it, it was about 7:30 in the evening. and I was like tired, and I thought, well, the next day, yes, that is yesterday, I had a Panmo radio. I relaunched a Panmo radio, by the way. So check that out if you are able to. Please do check out her Panmo radio. It's called her Panmo Media. Go to the Panmo Radio blog. That's the easiest way to find it. But I did a live show last night, and I was so busy with that, forget it. So I did say Friday would be when I do it. So we're gonna go through that in a minute. Now, before we do it, I just got to show you something funny, because this is Ross Coulthart did a Q&A, and I've watched all of it, but there's this particularly funny bit I want to show you.
The Earth is bigger than we know. Elizondo is a shill like Rush. Oh, go away, you boring twat. I can't be bothered.
Yeah, go away, you boring twat. Exactly. It's very, very trendy at the moment to be anti-Elizondo, isn't it? I mean, it's like that's backslapping. It is the epitome of the backslapper. Hey man, Elizondo's a shill and I can see it through it, man. I'm so superior. I can do this with my hands. Yeah. And everyone else is taken in by shills, but I'm superior, man. Yeah, I just wanted to show you that. I thought that was funny. But anyway, of course, let us go on to the main event, which is this one, which I'll show you. Now, before I begin, I just want to let you know that I'm going to play this. Here we go. Right. Now, I don't like doing this, but I'm going to play it at 1.5 times speed. The reason is because it is 2 hours, 26 minutes, and I don't want... it annoys me when we do this, but it's the only way I'm going to get through it. I'm also going to see the captions available. Sleep time quality, subtitles. Here we go. On, off. Subtitles, English auto generate. Okay, so I'm going to have the captions on as well, so that it's easier to follow. If I don't do this, this video is going to be about 6 hours long, and the reason is, look at these notes I made. While I was watching it, I made all these notes that I'm going to go through. Okay, just look at this. There's so much here, and like I said, I want this video to be sort of digestible. I certainly don't want it to be a two-parter, so we're going to play at 1.5 times speed. All right, so that's it. Let me just I'll just check my other notes a moment. If there's anything else I have to add? Well, I've got something I'm going to look through in a minute. Yeah. Bloody, bloody, blah. Okay. Now, I wasn't sure as I say at the top here, I wasn't sure if these hearings would happen. Here we go. Okay. This is it. Now, I wasn't sure if these hearings would happen. It's all right. It takes a couple of minutes to get going. I wasn't sure if these hearings would happen. Representative Nancy Mace made sure they did. I'll show you some of the memes before we finish this video, because I have. Well, if you follow me on Twitter, you've already seen them. But I retweeted and liked a whole load of really interesting stuff, which I'm going to show you. I mentioned the Skinwalker research team wasn't testifying. What if this is catastrophic disclosure? Are we going to see catastrophic disclosure? Well, you've probably already seen it. You've probably already seen this video, so you know the answer. But these were like my preliminary kind of thing that I was going to go through before. I wrote some of these notes. These notes I watched before. These ones at the top, I wrote those notes before the start. So what if it's catastrophic disclosure? Is there going to be a surprise witness? Are we going to talk about the Magenta craft, that one from Italy in the Mussolini era? Could it be big disclosure? Could today be big D disclosure? Yeah. But anyway, there were 19,000 people watching it at 4 minutes 30. It's before the thing even started. And I was very impressed with that. Right, yeah, I actually did a Y-Files. This is the Y-Files Discord. I did an OBS backup with this. I did an OBS backup, which I decided that because I wasn't sure if this would get deleted or not. As soon as it became ready for download, in other words, as soon as it was processed for download, I downloaded this video. So I do have a copy of this for my own records, because I thought this could get privatized or deleted. You never know. And the thing is, I thought to myself while I was watching it watching it and recording it on OBS, and I realized that if I had to resort to that, I'd have to put it on audio only, because I had the Y-Files Discord open. As I've explained to you, I am a Patreon of the Y-Files, because for reasons I've explained, I think it's a great channel. Now, I can't afford everything, but I can't afford to subscribe to everything, but I have become an official Patreon, paying them some money every month. I had the Discord open. They're very strict about not sharing the content, so I thought, well, it'll have to be audio only. But yeah, it wouldn't be the end of the world if it was audio only, because I mean, this is not like Hollywood stuff you're about to watch. It's typical parliamentary filming rules. That is wide-angle shots and sort of short-range shots only. No facial close-ups, things like that. It's just standard angles. So I could have got away with just audio only on this, but it's better to actually watch it. Then you get to see people's face, their body language, things like that, which you don't get on audio only. So I'm playing this at 1.5 speed. Captions is on, and we'll go through this when it starts. I'll go forward a little bit because here we go. It says we'll begin shortly. There's like a little preliminary which is just running in the background as they're all getting together. This is in room room 2154, which is in this building I told you about early on. This office building. I can't remember what it's called, but anyway, there's my notes. Just go forward a little bit. Come on, here we are. Are we on there now? Oh, blimey. Sorry, it's a longer preliminary. Hang on, here we go. Right, here we go. It's a bit of it's not quite 2 hours 36. There's like a 15 or 16 or 17 minute preliminary when the video's just running with this start screen. But we'll go through it anyway. I mean, this is a deep dive. This is what John Greenwald Jr. does. He does deep dives into things. This is why I put it on 1.5 times speed. I've got all these notes here. I got a feeling this is going to be a long video. Okay, guys, even with it on 1.5 speed. Come on in. Let's be having you. This is, but as you know, I've already watched this, hence the notes. So I'll pause it when I need to, and I will make comments. I may not make comments on all the notes I've got here, but I will use these as a guide, because basically this is a second viewing for me. So I'll no doubt I'll pick up things that I didn't see in the first viewing. But these notes I made during the first viewing where I watched it live. So you can pause and read these notes if you want. Because I will refer to them at times. Where are we now? All right, nearly there. Here we go. I'll just check you can hear this.
All right. Good morning. This joint hearing of the Subcommittee on Cybersecurity, Information Technology, and Government Innovation and the Subcommittee on National Security, the Border, and Foreign Affairs will come to order. Good morning and welcome, everyone. Without objection, the chair may declare a recess at any time.
It says sharing screen and audio, so I assume you can hear this. There we go.
Okay. All right.
You can see the caption on there.
This joint hearing of the Subcommittee on Cybersecurity, Information Technology, and Government Innovation.
Right, that is Representative Nancy Mace. Ooh, she's nice, isn't she? Isn't she lovely? Oh, yes, Nancy. I'd like to show her a large cigar-shaped object.
And the subcommittee
sorry, I'm being crude. Moving along.
National Security, the Border, and Foreign Affairs will come to order. Good morning and welcome, everyone. Without objection, the chair may declare a recess at any time, and I recognize myself for the purpose of making an opening statement right now. Good morning and welcome to today's historic hearing, which I'm co-chairing with Mr. Grothman, whose subcommittee held an important...
It says Grothman, it's actually Mr. Grothman.
...hearing on this topic last year. I want to thank my colleagues on the Oversight Committee, including Mr. Burchett, Mr. Burleson, Ms. Luna, Mr. Moskowitz, Mr. Garcia, for their relentless drive to get answers on UAPs.
A whole list of heroes there. Moskowitz, Garcia, Luna. Oh, yeah. We know, and Burchett, we all know these people, don't we?
They've been steadfast in demanding transparency on the sightings reported by military pilots and armed forces. Their commitment to digging for the truth is exactly what this country needs to cut through the secrecy surrounding this issue. And many high-ranking individuals in the military and intelligence communities believe UAPs demand greater attention, and thus the purpose for this hearing today. Former National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster said on Bill Maher's program that, quote, there are phenomena that have been witnessed by multiple people that are just inexplicable by the science available to us. Army Colonel Carl Nell, a member of the federal government UAP task force, said at a conference this past May that non-human intelligence exists. Non-human intelligence has been interacting with humanity. This interaction is not new, and it's been ongoing, and there are unelected people in the government that are aware of that.
Bloody hell. Unelected people in the government. I remember Carl Nell saying that very, very thing. Yes. It's really astonishing actually to hear politicians talk like this. I mean, we unfortunately, you Americans are lucky you've got these people. You really do, because there is literally no one in the UK establishment who has this attitude towards UFOs. And we had one that was Admiral of the Fleet, Lord Hill Norton, who was actually chief of the defence staff. He was like on the organising committee of NATO. He was very senior, and he did have a debate in the House of Lords, I think in about 1982, 1983, about this subject. But he died long ago, and we've had no one since, nobody at all.
But UAPs remain a controversial topic. I'm not going to name names, but there are certain individuals who didn't want this hearing to happen because they feared what might be disclosed. But we stood firm.
Well, you're not going to name names, Nancy. You should at some point. I know there's a limit to what you can say, just like there's a limit to what the witnesses can say, what the people on the witness panel can say. But still, you've hinted at this. You've mentioned, people. These people, what are they doing? What are they doing there if they don't want hearings like this to take place? And why? And I respect you for standing.
No amount of outside pressure would ever keep me from pursuing a subject to ground, come hell or high water. On that score, I want to thank our witnesses for being here. We have before us a panel of individuals accomplished in the military, in civilian government, in science, and in journalism. Some of the testimony you will hear them deliver today does not reflect well on influential individuals and agencies within the U.S. federal government.
So this is essentially, she's announcing this is an anti-establishment hearing. This is a hearing within the government, which is anti-establishment. As I said earlier on, I have a feeling that maybe the content, what you're about to see, would have been very different had Trump not won the election the previous week. I think you'd be seeing a very, very different you'd be seeing very different proceedings right now. I think the presence of Trump, the fact that he's already chosen, you look at the people he's chosen for his cabinet, Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr. Oh yeah, by the way, slight aside. Yeah, I actually, what did I retweet? Here we go. I retweeted this? Where is it? One sec, guys. Oh yeah. Mick West tweeted this about RFK. Do you want a chemtrails guy to be in charge of the health department? And I retweeted it. Where did I retweet it? Yeah, baby. I'll show you more from my Twitter feed later because there's some great stuff on there. Anyway, I don't want to linger too long. Otherwise, this like I say, this video is going to be 8 hours long.
Perhaps some of our contractors. It's never easy to present such information publicly. So I appreciate our witnesses voluntarily agreeing to being here today. This hearing is intended to help Congress and the American people to learn the extent of the programs and activities our government has engaged in with respect to UAPs and what knowledge it has yielded. This includes, of course, any knowledge of extraterrestrial life or technology of non-human origin.
She said it. Bloody hell. This was what was in the Schumer amendment but he was evacuated and eviscerated by the two Mikes and their cohorts from Lockheed Martin.
If government-funded research on UAPs has not yielded any useful knowledge, we also need to know those facts. Taxpayers deserve to know how much has it been invested, how much has been spent. They shouldn't be kept in the dark to spare the Pentagon a little bit of embarrassment. The reality is, despite their enormous taxpayer-funded budgets, the transparency of the Defense Department and the intelligence community have long been abysmal. The Pentagon has failed 6 consecutive audits. In fact, it's never actually passed one. Adding to this is a runaway overclassification of documents and materials.
I hope you can hear this, by the way. I hope you can hear because I've got it at 1.5 times speed. Some of the speakers actually speak at a slower rate than others. So for some of them, it's like, you put them on 1.5 speed and it's like normal. It's sort of normal discourse. With Norman Finkelstein, if you put him on 2, if you put him on twice speed, it sort of sounds a little bit normal.
A reluctance to declassify materials when appropriate, and at times an outright refusal to share critical information with Congress. In short, it's not a track record that instills trust. So Congress has tried in recent years to lift the veil and find out if information about UAPs is being withheld, not only from the American public, but also from their elected representatives in Congress. Part of the transparency effort was legislation created in the Pentagon, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO, but the new office is struggling to get its footing. A recent statute...
AARO is the new Project Blue Book. It's just part of the cover-up. I've been through that. I've done an entire video on AARO.
Orally required report from AARO, intended to illuminate the government's historic assessment of UAPs, was heavily criticized by those seeking UAP transparency. The report has stoked suspicions AARO is unable or perhaps unwilling.
Look, it says AARO. Now, this is auto captions. This is not a person doing it. This is why it says AARO, R-O-O-W. It's actually A-R, all domain anomaly resolution office. So it's AARO. So just bear with it. Just bear with it with these auto captions.
To bring forward the truth about the government's activities concerning UAPs. I'm disturbed that AARO itself lacks transparency. Even its budget is kept from the public. So if there is no there,
well, yeah, but I mean, even when it was ATIP, I mean, ATIP ORSAP had, they said it was $7 million a year. Do you remember? That was the one that ran from 2007 to 2012 that Jim Lukatsky and Lou Elizondo were involved in. Yes, Lou was involved in it. Shut up, you guys. He was. But yeah, and if there's no there, sorry, I interrupted her when she's making a very, very good point.
Then why are we spending money on it, and by how much? Why the secrecy if it's really no big deal and there's nothing there? Why hide it from the American people? Because
exactly, how much? This is a good point. How much? What is the U.S. budget in investigating leprechauns? What is the U.S. defense budget when it comes to investigating tooth fairies? Exactly, and they're spending God knows how many million every year investigating something. Oh, no one believes in that. It's all nonsense.
I'm not a mathematician, but I can tell you that doesn't add up. I expect some of our witnesses to share their views on that AARO report. We will also hear from the witnesses today allegations of UAP-related misinformation and disinformation by government officials of which they are personally aware and directly experienced. And we will hear testimony today concerning recent revelations about a purportedly secret UAP program whose existence and findings may have been improperly withheld from Congress. But before we get to the witnesses, we're going to have a few more opening statements from our colleagues. And one thing I wanted to add at the end of my closing statement is there is a document that will be entered into the Congressional record today. Mr. Tim Burchett from Tennessee has this document, and we just distributed it to every member up here on the dais of this document. But this is going to be the original document from the Pentagon about Immaculate Constellation.
Oh my God, this is what I did an entire video on this, didn't I? Where is it? I did, yes, I did. My last UFO Disclosure video was Immaculate Constellation, this one. Yeah, check that out if you haven't seen it. Where am I now? Okay. Still recording, yes.
That Michael Shellenberger delivered to Congress today. So thank you, Mr. Shellenberger, for this information. We are all reading it in real time now, and Mr. Burchett will enter it into the record. But 12 pages about this unacknowledged special access program that your government says does not exist.
Well, wait, I mean, she may not be, she says I'm not a mathematician, but it just doesn't add up. Wait till you get into the black budget, darling. You wait until you get into that. I mean, I'm sure she's aware of that, you know, and I'm sure at some point she'll bring that up. I mean, bear in mind there's a limit to what these people can say, just like the witnesses.
So with that, I would acknowledge my colleagues, Mr. Garcia. I want to say, first of all, to Mr. Connolly, who cannot be here today, the ranking member on my subcommittee on cybersecurity. I want to say that I was greatly saddened to hear about the recent news of Mr. Connolly's cancer diagnosis. And I want to convey to him and to all of our colleagues, we wish our very best to you and a full and speedy recovery. And with that, I would
get well soon, Mr. Connolly, whoever you are.
Acknowledge Mr. Garcia for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. This is the guy, and this is Anthony Garcia. This is, I'll wait till they go.
Chairwoman, I want to thank the chairwoman and the chairman both for their continued support and really treating this.
This is it, Mr. Garcia. He tried to enter, he entered a bill into Congress that was meant to replace the Schumer amendment. This guy's really, he's been in the skiffs as well. This guy is very much on our side.
This discussion and these hearings in a way that's bipartisan. I think one thing that's very important for all of us that are interested in the conversation around UAPs is that this is an area that both Republicans and Democrats, where we may disagree in a lot of other spaces, this is an area where bipartisanship is really important. And in fact,
yeah, even The Guardian said that, actually. The Guardian actually said that well, I remember the article they did after the last conference, what is it? UFOs unite a divided Congress. Because you had like, you literally had like, Matt Gaetz, Trump's just put him in the cabinet. You have Matt Gaetz, this icon of radical American conservative, next to Alexandria, occasionally Curtius or whatever her name is, you know, AOC. You know, she's a democratic socialist, and they were both sitting next to each other, interested in UFOs. So yeah, I see what he's mean. I see what he means by that.
In fact, I would add it's critical that we all continue to work together in a way that moves forward with the truth and important disclosure. So we're here to have a bipartisan and serious conversation, I believe, about our national security. We should always ground these conversations in facts, evidence, and the data in front of us. I want to note that we have our witnesses here. I want to thank you all for being here, and note that also amongst you have folks that also served us in our military. And I know that for many of you, this is a difficult process, but I'm very grateful to have you with us today, and thank you for joining us. I also want to note that today's hearing builds on a quite, I think, also historic public hearing that we had many months ago that Mr. Grothman and others helped lead in this very same hearing room, where I believe we began a really important public conversation.
That was the one in July last year, if you remember. I did a video about it, and I remember it very well because I watched it in the Wetherspoons in Bath because I was going to the Glastonbury Symposium, and I couldn't actually do my commentary until I got back from that. I remember that very well. I was sitting in this pub, literally watching this thing on my laptop.
About UAPs. And so I want to thank him for that, and I especially want to thank Chairwoman Mays for her continued advocacy on this topic. I also want to start today with some facts. We know that there are objects or phenomena observed in our airspace, as your witnesses will testify, and also possibly in our oceans. In many cases, we don't know what they are, and this is, of course, why we're discussing UAPs. Now, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, AARO, has reported hundreds of UAPs that remain, quote, uncharacterized and unattributed, and which, quote, appear—
We won't say how many hundred. Bill Nelson let it slip. That's the head of NASA. He let it slip that it was like over 300. That's an awful lot, because that was only in like I think a 2-year period.
Have demonstrated unusual flight characteristics or performance capabilities and require further analysis. This is our own AARO office. Now, we shouldn't prejudge what they might be. I'm certainly not going to. We need evidence. But we are detecting things, and we know that we don't understand them, and this is worth investigating. Now, the American people have legitimate questions, and I believe it's critical that Congress should help address them. This is about the truth.
Not just the Americans, mate. The whole world.
And science and facts. Now, transparency and faith in our institutions is vital in a good democracy. Now, I'm proud to say this hearing will build on that important bipartisan work, and I want to thank everyone for being involved, including members of our committee. Now, in our last hearing in July, we heard testimony that a significant number of pilots of major airlines have witnessed UAPs as well, but have no real confidential way of reporting them to the government. We heard that commercial pilots who encounter UAPs may be hesitant.
This has been an issue for a while, actually, because the focus has been on military pilots, but what about civilian pilots? I mean, there was that guy, Callahan, who was head of the Federal Aviation Administration. He was very good. He spoke at Greer's hearing in 2001. I don't know if he's even still alive now. That was so long ago. It's like another world. But yeah, he brought up this point. He mentioned Captain Terrahucci and his encounter over Alaska in 1986, where he encountered a disc-shaped object that was literally 10 times the size of his plane, and he was flying a 747 cargo jet.
To speak openly due to stigma or fear of retaliation. We also know that AARO has reported that, and I want to quote, that
stigma and fear of retaliation. Now, this is why I get really annoyed with the skeppers when they say things like, well, why are the pilots not saying about it? They don't see these things, do they? Well, they do. They just keep their mouths shut.
Most reports still reflect a bias towards restricted military airspace, a result of reporting from military personnel and sensors present in such areas. And so the lack of ability for civilian pilots raises real safety concerns and limits our ability to understand UAPs.
It's true that UFO or UAP activity is focused on restricted military reservations. And there's a reason for that. Probably it's because the whatever behavior we can glean from these intelligences, they do seem to have a big interest in our ability to wage war. There could be, some people say it's because they'd stop us if we were launching missiles at each other. That's sort of like positivist kind of new age idea about UFOs. We don't know that, though. It could be they're sizing us up for an invasion. I mean, it could be either of those things. The answer is probably somewhere in between, but we don't know.
Particular piece of this conversation that I am very interested in. Now, our last hearing inspired us to introduce the Safe Airspace for Americans Act, joined by Chairman Grothman, Chairwoman Mace, and a bipartisan group of co-sponsors. I see some of our leaders from Safe Airspace for Americans Act here, and that would create a safe reporting for UAP process, which we want to continue to do. Now, members of both parties and senior officials in multiple administrations have now taken an interest in this issue. Mainstream media, in many cases, are beginning to take more of an interest in this issue, and we should all be proud to carry that work and build confidence forward.
Yeah, they have, and they've said, "Oh, we just discovered this." Once the mainstream media going, "Well, it's amazing we've just discovered this, isn't it?" I mean, we always said these things were real, didn't we? You laughed at us and you took the piss, right? And we told you so, and you just said, "Bleh, you're idiots," and now you're trying to rewrite your own history. I mean, this is essentially what Simon Holland did, Not that I've sort of like become quite fond of Simon, to be honest, but that was his original reaction when he saw the writing on the wall. He shifted his position. I remember it very well.
The American people. I believe we can always be more transparent. To me, this hearing and others are simply about the truth and getting to the facts of what these UAPs actually are. It's very important that we show that Democrats and Republicans in Congress can work together to cut through misinformation and look for a serious and thoughtful way to have the discussion in public. Many of us have also called for additional public hearings to discuss UAPs. This should be a topic that continues on throughout the Congress so we can gather more information, data, and work with the relevant agencies to gather more information. Finally, just want to add that those that are here on this dais, many of us have participated also in classified briefings as well, and where we have also gained a lot of important, I think, and interesting information, at least I personally have. And so with that information, we want to continue today's hearing, and I thank all of our witnesses for being here. And with that, I'd like to yield back.
Thank you.
They have you see, it says here, stonewalling requests for questions not to be asked. Yeah, this was actually mentioned by Nancy Mace as well. In fact, I think she's going to say so here, actually.
Mr. Garcia, and I'm now like to recognize Mr. Grothman for a 5-minute introduction.
Thank you. Good morning. I'd like to thank our witnesses for being here one more time. This is a topic I've been interested in since 8th grade.
He looks like Jim Fetzer. It's not him. That's not Greer behind. That's not enough. God, for a moment I thought I was Greer. No, it's Graham Hancock. You're the guy sitting behind him. Sorry, I'm just. No, it's not. But for a moment I thought that's Stephen Greer. Then I thought that's Graham Hancock. It's not. It's neither.
I'd like to thank
that's some aide or staffer or secretary or something or other.
Ms. Mace for working with me on this topic and for making this a joint subcommittee hearing. Last year, the Subcommittee on National Security, the Border and Foreign Affairs held a historic hearing to understand the potential national security risk of unidentified anomalous phenomena, or UAPs. We heard from former Navy Commander David Fravor, who shared firsthand experience with the
This is the hearing last July that he's talking about now, which you remember I covered in detail.
UAP engaged while on duty in the Pacific. We learned from David Grush, a former member of the intelligence community, who revealed the supposed existence of
David Grush
secret government programs hidden from congressional oversight. Additionally, former military pilot Ryan Graves informed us of the limited ways in which the military and commercial pilots can report UAP sightings. Since that last hearing, I've led several briefings with government agencies to deepen my understanding of these issues. First, the Department of Defense Inspector General's office informed us that the Department of Defense does not have a streamlined process for service members to report UAP activity. Since then, the Joint Chiefs have implemented standards.
Well, that's probably because, I think these things are improving, like he just said. But it's because of the cover-up, basically, that they do that.
UAP reporting across the services. The Intelligence Community Inspector General informed us that whistleblowers often fear retaliation for reporting mismanagement of highly sensitive government projects or information. Finally,
again, why such retaliation? Why, if a soldier or an airman or a sailor in the Navy knows something about tooth fairies and decides to approach the newspapers and talk about it, what happens? Well, he may be referred to the unit psychologist, but apart from that, nothing bad particularly. So why this difference with UFOs when both apparently don't exist? Both apparently equally ephemeral and fantastic and nonsensical.
AARO has expressed to the committee that, like any other federal government agency, it's faced challenges in its establishment, specifically in hiring staff to manage UAP historical records and coordinating with other federal agencies. While these agencies have been helpful to us in understanding the challenges that come from collecting UAP data, none of them have been able to substantiate the claims made at this hearing last year by David Grush, despite our committee members endlessly questioning these agencies inside and outside of a skiff. I hope our witnesses today will be able to provide evidence and content that is worthwhile to our pursuits of eliminating government waste and increasing transparency.
Well, the reason this is interesting because they couldn't validate them, but this wasn't because of they couldn't find them, I believe. I mean, of course, the skeptics will say, well, they couldn't validate them because this information doesn't exist because Grush is talking nonsense. He's heard secondhand stories from people, and he's talking about them like they're real. Yet, the fact of the matter is, I think a lot of these people, including this gentleman here, I think understand that they know when someone is saying no, this doesn't exist to yes, it does exist, but we can't tell you. There is a difference between these two things, and these Congress people understand that because they've been in this business long enough.
To help alleviate some of the roadblocks, I'm supportive of measures that were included in last year's National Defense Authorization Act to increase transparency and improve record-keeping measures when it comes to UAPs.
Yeah, that act that was then that was the Schumer amendment. On it says, as the NDA AA, does it still have teeth? Danny Sheehan thought so. Like I said before, Danny Sheehan thought that the 18th of October would be the big day. Again, why go to all this effort to sideline a piece of legislation, and why are the two individuals behind it? Why do they have their campaigns funded by Lockheed Martin? I've made this point before many times. Again, for what? For unicorns? Who cares if we got unicorns?
But I believe there's still more work to go. I co-led the Safe Airspace for Americans Act with Ranking Member Garcia, which requires the Federal Aviation Administration to develop procedures to collect UAP data from civilian aviators. I look forward to working with members of Congress to see that this legislation and other UAP legislation crosses the finish line. I'm deeply alarmed by the reporting of the massive drone drone swarm that flew over Langley Air Force Base in Virginia last December. Langley is the home of the 1st Fighter Wing, which maintains half of the F-22s in the U.S. Air Force inventory. Reports of this incident indicate...
Yeah, the skeptics say that was, I think they say it was drones or flares or something, but clearly that's not the case.
These drones were roughly 20 feet long, flying more than 100 miles an hour at an altitude of over 3,000 feet. Yet the origin of these drones and their operators remains a mystery. This incident and other sightings in your sensitive...
Now, he's called them drones, not objects. So he's actually being a bit ambiguous about whether he classifies these in the sort of non-human area that Nancy Mace did, and indeed the witnesses are going to in a minute.
Installations highlights the complexity of the UAP challenge facing our intelligence, defense, and homeland security committees. Whether these phenomena are the result of foreign adversaries developing advanced technologies or something else entirely, we must take them seriously, investigate them thoroughly, and assess their implications on...
It is something else entirely, mate. Come on, you know that.
National defense. The repeated UAP sightings around sensitive military sites underscores the need for innovative defensive strategies beyond traditional measures. They also highlight the urgent need for updated policies to address emerging threats.
That's fair enough. I mean, from the position of military strategy, these things are technically threats. I mean, a lot of fuss has been made over the use of the word threat, but it's in the parlance of military strategy, a threat is not something you automatically shoot at. It's something that you don't know what it is that could be dangerous. And let's face it, that's by every definition of that word from their position, that's what UFOs are. Doesn't mean they're going to wage war on them and they're enemies and we've got to kill them all, stuff like that. But it just means, well, what are they? They could be, especially when they can penetrate our most secure nuclear facilities at will with impunity. There's nothing we can do to stop them.
Threats, as well as more effective interagency cooperation and intelligence sharing. However, none of this is going to be possible without transparency. For far too long, critical information about UAPs has been either classified or ignored, leaving the American public and key congressmen without clarity needed to make informed decisions. Declassifying reports and fostering a more open dialogue about UAPs will not only increase the public trust, but also encourage collaboration between government, the scientific community, and our allies. Quite frankly, there's been things that have been kept secret that is, I think, old enough that there is no reason it shouldn't be released, regardless of any so-called, private information.
Yeah, we're talking about more than a century now. I mean, Roswell wasn't the first Roswell. It goes back even before then.
A transparent approach will allow us to share insights, identify patterns, and develop new strategic defenses. As we continue to investigate these phenomena, we must do so with a mindset of protecting our country, advancing scientific discovery, and upholding the trust of the American people, who right now I don't think have trust. And it's just obvious. I don't have trust. We cannot.
Of course, I mean, I think you understand that this is a failure of the legislature. Although I think you guys personally want to change that and make it better.
Shy away from the unknown, especially when the stakes are so high. I look forward to discussing these matters with the witnesses today. I'm hopeful we can learn from the testimony and come out of this hearing with actionable ideas to advance UAP transparency. Actually, the idea is just to say, in my mind, go back 15 years and everything has to be released. I'm hopeful that we can learn from their testimony and come out of this
Try 50
hearing. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you. I'll now recognize Mr. Moskowitz for a 5-minute introduction.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Good morning, everyone. I first want to thank the chairs and ranking members for holding the hearing today on this topic. And
good old Jerry Moskowitz. He's got the best hairstyle and the worst suit in all of Congress.
Again, having a second hearing. I want to thank the witnesses for coming forward today to share your expertise on UAPs and the need to build trust through transparency. But first, I want to mention...
This guy, Moskowitz, he was in the skiffs. I mean, he did an interview when he came out of the skiffs. He had Anna Paulina Luna with him. And it's pretty here. I mean, I covered this on her Panama Voice. I'm not going to dig up the article now. You can find it yourself. It's on my UFO Disclosure portal. Pardon me. But it's pretty obvious they heard something in there that was groundbreaking. They couldn't tell us, but they said, you could see by the looks on their faces and what they were saying, they'd heard something really explosive in that skiff.
You might be wondering why Chairman Comer has allowed me to be a ranking member today, but it's really only because our dear friend, Jerry Connolly, is not here. As Chairwoman Mace mentioned, he was diagnosed with esophageal cancer, and all of us on this committee know Jerry, and he's a fighter, and we're praying for him and hoping for his speedy recovery. So today's hearing marks this committee's second meeting dedicated to UAP transparency. I was pleased, as I know all of us are, on the bipartisanship that existed in last year's hearing, and even though we can't talk about what happens in the classified settings, the bipartisanship that has existed in those settings with the questions members have asked. Last year's hearing was a great example of open dialogue about UAPs, and we must remain committed to sharing information with the American people, and I think you see that commitment based on the people here and the commitment across the political spectrum. I personally have worked with multiple members of this committee, but I want to particularly thank Congressman Burchett, Mace, Luna, and Garcia for working on bipartisan pieces of legislation. In recent years, Congress has taken numerous bipartisan steps towards greater transparency. In 2022, in the NDAA, we created the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office to investigate unidentified flying objects. Following Aero, along with ODNI, released an unclassified report on UAP sightings. Of the 366 sightings included in the report, 171 remain uncharacterized, with some of these appearing to have demonstrated unusual flight characteristics or performance capabilities. That's a nice way of saying we don't want to tell you what they are. Yeah,
but it means that they are also unusual. I mean, you'll hear from the witnesses in a minute exactly what that unusual means.
March, Aero revealed a report on the historical record of U.S. government involvement with UAPs, which covered investigatory efforts going back from 1945 to the present day. Earlier this year, I joined Congressman Burchett to introduce the UAP Transparency Act, which would require the declassification of all documents related to UAPs with many other members of this committee. In fiscal year 2024, the NDA required the National Archives and Records Administration to establish the Unidentified Anonymous Phenomena Records Collection. This collection will include digital copies of all unidentified UAP records that can be publicly disclosed. This commitment in transparency is vitally important, and unnecessary overclassification has led to a void of information, which has allowed theories over the decades to foster. When the American people and members of Congress ask, are reports of UAPs credible, we're met with stonewalling. We're met with responses of I can't tell you. And in fact, we're met with people not wanting us to have hearings. We're met with people not wanting us to ask you questions. In fact, many of us were told not to ask some of you certain questions on certain topics. In a time of heightened distrust of our government institutions, I believe more transparency is not only needed, but is possible. And obviously we can respect.
I mean, so we've always said, we conspiracy theorists have always said this stuff, requests for questions not to be asked, stonewalling, etc. We've always said that was a part of it, haven't we? And we were told we were crazy for thinking that.
National security limits, but we also have to provide our constituents with the information and oversight that they have tasked us for. As part of this, government agencies must maintain open lines of communication with members of Congress. And there are regular questions that Americans have. What are UAPs? Are they real? Are they ours? How has this technology been developed? How do they get funded? Right? And
what he says when he says Americans could really be for probably every country on earth, because this is a global phenomenon, and there are people interested in it in every country in the world.
Now we've seen this has gone from a long time ago where you could discredit people because it's some guy living in a Winnebago. You're able to see people now. These are pilots. These are military. These are.
I don't know what a Winnebago is. Maybe an American. If any Americans watching, please. He's obviously making some kind of joke, perhaps all being sarcastic. Perhaps you could tell me.
Folks with serious backgrounds. This has changed the face of this because now we have video.
Oh, Mick West did this. Hang on, let me. I stole. Where was it here? I actually did a reply to him. Where was it? Because I actually said to him. Oh, here we go. It's Mick West. Now we have videos, says Moskowitz, holding up his iPhone 16 Pro, which can indeed take great photos and video of things in the sky. So where are they? Where are the good UFO videos from the public? Why can't we get 2 phone videos of the same anomalous event? And I said here, this was my reply to him. We do. It's just then the skeptics say they're fake. Sadly, they might be right. What can't be fake these days? Photographic evidence just does not carry the same weight it used to. There's a terrible signal-to-noise ratio problem. So that's what I said to Mick West in reply to him over this issue.
We'll have questions. We know there are advanced technology programs. Almost 15 years ago, one of those came out of Area 51 to go after Osama bin Laden. And the only reason we know about that is because one of those helicopters was downed. Americans have questions about whistleblowers who have come forward.
Is that No Easy Day thing he's talking about? Do you remember I did a video on No Easy Day? It was at the beginning of the year about the special forces guys who supposedly went into Afghanistan or went into Pakistan to kill bin Laden, because I think there's more to that than meets the eye.
Talk about retribution. And so I want to thank everyone for being involved today on trying to get more transparency. This has been bipartisan, bicameral, and as we get into a new administration, the president-elect has talked about opportunities.
Bicameral, it wasn't translated properly. Bicameral just means both the Senate and the House of Representatives.
To declassify information on UAPs, and I hope he lives up to that promise. And with that,
if Trump doesn't, no one will.
Back.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moskowitz. And I would now, committee staff asked me to go ahead and do it.
I'm going to just change the speed just for this particular bit, because this is a very solemn moment here. Where is it? Hang on. Playback speed. Let's go back to normal, just for a moment.
to enter into the congressional record this 12-page document that Michael Shellenberger brought today that describes the Immaculate Constellation government program. So we will do that now. Every member up here has a copy of it. The first section talks about the unacknowledged special access program called Immaculate Constellation, and the second section about USG imagery intelligence. And Representative Luna just told me if I say Immaculate Constellation, I'll be on some list. Maybe a FISA warrant. So,
God, she's based, isn't she? She really is.
Come at me, bro, I guess. But
come at me, bro. All right, well, come at me, bro. I know I was going to do all this at the end, but let me just show you this was disclosure memes. They put this was disclosure memes. Nancy Mace holding a mace. Come at me, bro. So I was going to share. I was going to show you these at the end, but I might sort of dip in and out of this of my Twitter feed while I'm doing it. This is a good. I quite like this. I quite like. This is disclosure memes. I quite like this. I do follow them. I think they're quite good. Anyway, let's get back onto this.
Without objection, entered in the record. All right. So next, we will introduce our witnesses for today's hearing. Thank you so much for being here. Our first witness is retired Rear Admiral Gallaudet, who retired from the U.S. Navy and is now the Chief Executive Officer at Ocean STL Consulting. Our second witness is Mr. Lou Elizondo, a former Department of Defense official and author of a recent bestseller book about UAPs. Our third witness is Mr. Michael Shellenberger, founder of the newsletter Public and author of a recent journalistic piece about special access programs, including one widely identified as Immaculate Constellation. I swear the staff wants me on a list. Okay. And our last witness today is Mr. Michael Gold, a former NASA official who was also a member.
This guy's interesting. I mean, he's as I said earlier on, he's a newcomer to this. Oh, by the way, keep an eye on this pair of hands here behind him, because you may recognize those tattoos. That is none other than Jezza himself. Yeah, Jeremy Corbell is crouching is in his usual place on the front row. And he makes some interesting hand symbols. If you keep an eye on his hands, because he does a couple of little gestures that I think mean he's trying to communicate something.
Member of the NASA UAP Independent Study.
There he is, there's old Jezza. Who else is on the front row? Let's have a look. Can you recognise any of these people? Let's have a look. I can't know. George Knapp's not there this time. Last time George Knapp was sitting in front of him. Let's look at the second row. Is that Moultrie? No, he's got hair. That's Moultrie. I thought it was Moultrie. He's got. There's Leslie Kane there. Look, there's Leslie Kane, and there's Danny Sheehan. See him on the fourth row. So on the fourth row there. Yeah. Who else? That's all I can see. So if I spot anyone else familiar, I'll let you know, and we'll sort of be happy that they're in the room.
Team, welcome everyone. We're pleased to have you today. Pursuant to Committee Rule 9G, the witnesses will please stand and raise your right hands. This is where it gets real. Do you solemnly swear to affirm that the testimony that you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record show that the witnesses all answered in the affirmative. We appreciate.
Okay. The reason I wanted to make that was a very solemn moment. In fact, this is a historical image here of these men raising their hands. I think it's very important. Ross said, he had a lump in his throat when this happened back last year. Yeah, I wanted to play that. I wanted to play that at normal speed for that reason. Now that's over. We'll go back to 1.5. Here we go. Okay, there we go.
Appreciate all of you being here today and look forward to your testimony. Let me remind the witnesses that we have read your written statements and they will appear in full in the hearing record. You guys may be seated. Please limit your oral statements to 5 minutes. As a reminder, please press the button in front of you so the microphone is turned on so that everyone in the room, members included, can hear you. When you begin to speak, the light in front of you will turn green. After 4 minutes, the light will turn yellow. When the red light comes on, your 5 minutes has expired, and we would ask that you please wrap it up. So I will first recognize Rear Admiral.
There's a lot, you will notice actually there's a lot of very strict timekeeping in this, because I think they knew this was going to be very long, and it is very, very long, as you can see here. This is much longer than, it's at least an hour longer than last year's hearing.
Gallaudet, to please begin your opening remarks.
Thank you, Chairwoman Mace. Chairman.
He was in Darcy Weir's documentary about USOs. Very interesting guy indeed.
Rothman, Ranking Members Connolly and Garcia, and members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to testify today regarding unidentified anomalous phenomena, or UAP. Confirmation that UAPs are real came to me in January of 2015 when I was serving as the commander of the Navy Meteorology and Oceanography Command. At the time,
right, you've probably heard this story. But it's Gallaudet's experience of the USS Theodore Roosevelt, where something really remarkable happened. It's when the go fast was actually spotted, and you'll hear how there was a massive cover-up as a result of this.
My personnel were participating in a pre-deployment naval exercise off the U.S. East Coast. It included the USS Theodore Roosevelt Carrier Strike Group, and this exercise was overseen by the United States Fleet Forces Command, led by a 4-star admiral who at the time was also my superior officer. During this exercise, I received an email on the Navy Secure Network from the operations officer of U.S. Fleet Forces Command. The email was addressed to all the subordinate commanders, and the subject line read in all capital letters, "Urgent Safety of Flight Issue." The text of the email was brief but alarming, with words to the effect, "If any of you know what these are, tell me ASAP. We are having multiple near mid-air collisions, and if we do not resolve this soon, we are going to have to shut down the exercise."
Yeah, all this stuff about, oh, well, it's secret US government technology. It's drones from Area 51. They wouldn't be flying them near a US naval battle group if it was drones from Area 51. They'd be flying them where they fly all the secret stuff from Area 51, as is mentioned in Annie Jacobson's book. That's why Area 51 is in such a remote area. This is why it creates airways with a floor of 60,000 feet. These skeptics really, these backslappers really need to get their act into gear. This is not secret US government technology.
Attached to the email is what is now known as
what I'm basically saying is that if they were stupid enough to do that, they know they could get people killed on an exercise like this.
The Go Fast video, captured on the forward-looking infrared sensor of one of the Navy F-A-18 aircraft participating in the exercise. The now declassified
"It's a seagull"
video showed an unidentified object exhibiting flight and structural characteristics unlike anything in our arsenal. The implication of the email was clear. The author was asking whether any of the recipients were aware of classified technology demonstrations that could explain these objects. Because the DoD policy is to rigorously deconflict such demonstrations with live exercises, I was confident this was not the case. The very next day, that email disappeared from my account and those of the other recipients without explanation.
The email disappeared from all the recipients. They didn't delete it. It just disappeared. Does that ever happen to your emails? You just look at one and think, oh, there's an email. I'll read that later. You go back and it's disappeared. No, it's not. Strange, that, isn't it?
Moreover, the commander of Fleet Forces Command and the operations officer never discussed the subject, even during weekly meetings specifically designed to address issues affecting exercises like the one in which the Theodore Roosevelt Strike Group was participating. This lack of follow-up was very concerning to me. As the Navy's chief meteorologist at the time, I was responsible for reducing safety of flight risks.
It's not neurologist, it's meteorologist. He was a weather forecaster, basically, which is a very important role in aviation operations at sea.
Yet it appeared to me that no one at the flag officer level was addressing the safety risks posed by UAPs. Instead, pilots were left to mitigate these threats on their own without guidance or support. I concluded that the UAP information must have been classified within a special access program managed by an intelligence agency. Yeah. That is a compartmented program that even senior officials, including myself, were not read into.
Again, retired rear admirals never used to say things like this. We nutcases did, but now they are.
Last year's UAP hearing before this oversight committee confirmed that UAP-related information is being withheld from senior officials and members of Congress. And just this week, I learned from former DoD official Chris Mellon that satellite imagery of UAP from a few years ago still has not been shared with Congress. Equally concerning, last year's UAP hearing also revealed that elements of the government are engaged in a disinformation campaign to include personal attacks designed to discredit UAP whistleblowers. Having never signed a non-disclosure...
Unfortunately, there's enough idiots out there who do it for nothing. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if like the government was... The government is doing their own... discredit the role. They're doing their own job to discredit and to confuse with their own propaganda, like Project Mockingbird, if you remember that one, and various other psychological warfare operations. But of course, there's plenty of idiots out there who'll just do it off their own volition.
Agreement regarding UAPs, and now as a private citizen, I've become an advocate for greater UAP transparency from the government. The continued overclassification surrounding UAPs has not only hindered our ability to effectively address these phenomena, but has also eroded trust in our institutions. While I applaud previous bipartisan legislation passed by Congress concerning UAPs, a more comprehensive approach is needed to address the broader...
It hasn't been passed properly though, Tim, has it? Because thanks to the two mics, getting the Schumer Amendment repealed 2 years running, I know that's something you're against, just like I am.
Application of UAP on public safety and national security, as well as the socioeconomic opportunities that open UAP research could unlock. Therefore, I recommend Congress take the following action, which I believe will receive bipartisan support. First, establish robust oversight of the executive branch's management of UAP information by directing key officials, beginning with the director of the DoD's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, to provide comprehensive briefings on what the government knows about UAP and does not know.
Well, this was part of the Schumer Amendment. He's just saying something that was in the Schumer Amendment. There should be an official executive oversight organization, which of course under Joe Biden was hopeless, wasn't it? But now we got Trump. I think it's a much more viable option. Even it could be introduced through separate legislation. You don't need the Schumer Amendment for it.
2, enact the provisions of the UAP Disclosure Act that establish a UAP Records Review Board to ensure independent oversight, transparency, and accountability in the government's handling of UAP information. And 3, strengthen the UAP Disclosure Act and future reauthorizations with provisions that mandate a whole-of-government approach to addressing UAP. In closing, I will share my
good idea, mate. Yes, all those 3 options are really, really important.
Personal reasons for speaking out on this topic. First, as a former science agency leader, having led the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, I've always sought the truth in human knowledge and thought. Now that we know UAP are interacting with humanity, and these include unidentified submerged objects in the ocean, we should not turn a blind eye, but instead boldly face this new reality and learn from it. Additionally, at a time when leaders in government leave much to be desired, I feel obligated to show moral leadership on this issue of UAP disclosure by validating the credibility of the courageous men and women who have come out as witnesses and whistleblowers to expose the truth. My speaking out has encouraged others to do the same, and it's my hope over time that a number of your constituents will want to know the truth and about UAP, and this number will increase to such an extent that the congressional action I've just recommended will become inevitable. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Yeah.
Thank you. I will now recognize Mr. Elizondo for his opening statement.
I'll say that was me applauding, not there. But you will hear applause later on, which is contrary to congressional protocol, but people do applaud. You wait and see.
Greetings, Chairwoman Mace, Chairman Grothman,
There you go, Lou.
Members of the committee. It is my honor and privilege to testify before you on the issue of unidentified anomalous phenomenon, formerly known as UFOs. On behalf of our brave men and women in uniform and across the intelligence community, as well as my fellow Americans who have awaited this day, thank you for your leadership on this important matter. Let me be clear. UAP are real. Yeah. Advanced technologies not made by our government or any other government are monitoring sensitive military installations around the globe.
Not made by our government or any other government. Well, what does that leave? Lou is unequivocal. Lou is the most outspoken about that particular issue.
Furthermore, the U.S. is in possession of UAP technologies, as are some of our adversaries. I believe we are in the midst of a
Roswell's base. He's just saying that these are crash retrievals.
Decade secretive arms race, one funded by misallocated taxpayer dollars and hidden from our elected representatives and oversight bodies. For many years, I was entrusted with protecting some of our nation's most sensitive programs. In my last position, I managed a special access program on behalf of the White House.
If Stanton Friedman is just looking down on this from wherever he is now, I just hope he is smiling, because this is exactly what he longed for during his life.
And the National Security Council. As such, I appreciate the need to protect certain sensitive intelligence and military information. I consider my oath to protect secrets as sacred, and I will always put the safety of the American people first. With that said, I also understand the consequences of excessive secrecy and stovepiping. Nowhere was this more apparent than in the aftermath.
Stovepiping, as I think I explained earlier, that basically means compartmentalization. You know, like one guy makes the machine that's the detonator for the bomb in the Manhattan Project, but he doesn't know it's going to go into that particular device.
Of 9/11, which many of us remember all too well. I believe that.
9/11. Well, that's just maybe I'll say more about. Obviously, I have said more about that, and I will say more about that. And Lou doesn't. If he has suspicions in that area, he doesn't want to breach them now.
America's greatness depends on 3 elements. A watchful Congress, B, a responsive executive branch, and C, an informed public. Over the last decade and a half, I learned that certain UAP programs were and are operating without any of these elements. Although much of my government work on the UAP subject still remains classified, excessive secrecy has led to grave misdeeds against loyal civil servants, military personnel, and the public, all to hide the fact that we are not alone in the cosmos. A small cadre within our own government involved in the UAP topic has created a culture of suppression and intimidation that I've personally been victim to, along with many of my former colleagues.
If you read his book, he talks about what happened to him. Yeah, I mean, it affected his entire family.
This includes unwarranted criminal investigations, harassment, and efforts to destroy one's credibility. Most Americans would be shocked to learn that the Pentagon's very own Public Affairs Office openly employs a professional psychological operations officer as the singular point of contact for any UAP-related inquiries from citizens and the media.
Why should we be surprised? I mean, look what happened to Alex Jones. Look what's just happened to Richard D. Hall. I mean, poor Richard. I didn't know this, but he owes them. You know, he's been ordered to pay more than $45,000. He's been ordered to pay $279,000. I mean, they want to destroy us.
This is unacceptable. Many of my former colleagues and I have provided classified testimony to both the Department of Defense and the Intelligence Community Inspector General, and many of us have subsequently been targeted by this cabal with threats to our careers, our security clearances, and even our lives. This is not hyperbole.
Our lives. He's actually, basically, Grush said this last year, didn't he? People have been killed over this.
But a genuine fact, and this is wrong. To fix these problems, I propose 3 principal actions. First, Congress and the President should create a single point of contact responsible for a whole-of-government approach to the UAP issue. Currently, the White House, CIA, NASA, the Pentagon, Department of Energy, and others play a role, but no one seems to be in charge, leading to unchecked power and corruption. Second, we need a national UAP strategy that will promote transparency and help restore the American public's trust at a time when the public's trust is at an all-time low. This strategy should include a whole-of-government approach, including the academic and scientific communities, the private sector, and our international partners and allies. Third, Congress should create a protected environment so whistleblowers desperate to do the right thing can come forward without fear. As it currently stands, these whistleblowers suffer because of stigma, a code of silence, and concern about retaliation. These whistleblowers should be encouraged to come forward in ways that protect them against any forms of retaliation. Policies and procedures should ensure that protection, and for those who refuse to cooperate, it is up to the members of this committee and other lawmakers to wield their subpoena power against hostile witnesses and prevent additional government funding to those UAP efforts that remain hidden from congressional oversight. In closing,
well said. I mean, this is basically what he's saying is there needs to be like what Richard Dolan and Bryce Zabel said in their book, AD After Disclosure, a Department of Extraterrestrial Affairs. You could call it a Department of UFO Studies or UAP Studies, whatever it is. But it needs some really high up, some very, very high up organization attached, organized by the president and people like that deals with this subject from a single source of information, basically.
we as Americans have never been afraid of a challenge. In fact, we thrive on them, whether it's eradicating polio or going to the moon.
Never mind. I don't want to spoil this. I'm not going to spoil what Lou is saying now by just injecting my own opinions on completely irrelevant subjects.
We don't run from a challenge, we take it head on. To the incoming administration and Congress, I say to you, we need immediate public transparency. And this hearing is an important step on that journey. If we approach the UAP topic in the same way as we, as Americans, have met other challenges, we can restore our faith in our government institutions. Together, we can usher in a new era of accountable government and scientific discovery. I believe that we as Americans can handle the truth. And I also believe the world deserves the truth. Thank you, esteemed members of Congress, for your time today. It is profoundly appreciated by many.
Thank you. I ask unanimous consent for Representatives Ogles of Tennessee and Boebert of Colorado.
Would you want to? I bet he voted Trump. I bet you.
To be waived onto the subcommittee for today's joint subcommittee hearing for the purpose of asking questions without objection so ordered. I would now like to recognize Mr. Shellenberger for his introductory remarks.
Chairwoman Mace, Chairman Grothman, Ranking Member Connolly, Ranking Member Garcia, members of...
This is basically, he's going to talk about what that video I made, Immaculate Constellation.
Subcommittees, thank you for inviting my testimony. One of Congress's most important responsibilities is oversight of the executive branch in general and the military and intelligence community in particular. Unfortunately, there is a growing body of evidence that the U.S. government is not being transparent about what it knows about unidentified anomalous phenomena, and that elements within the military and the IC are in violation of their constitutional duty to notify Congress of their operations.
No shit, Sherlock.
President-elect Donald Trump and former President Barack Obama have both said that the government has information about UAPs that it has not released. There are other explanations for UAPs than that they represent a new form of life or non-human life. Current dominant alternative theories, including those put forward by Arrow, are that UAPs are some kind of natural phenomena we don't yet understand, like ball lightning or plasma.
Some of them might be. I mean, some of them do appear to be some kind of electrical. It almost is like an electrical effect. They appear to be not solid. But, you know, I think some of them obviously are. They are structured and solid. They appear to be made out of metal of some kind. So there's different kinds of UFO. I mean, UFO is I think maybe a generic term we use possibly for more than one phenomenon.
It could also be part of some new U.S. or foreign government weapons programs, such as drones, aircraft, balloons, CG.
They wouldn't be flying near the Theodore Roosevelt battle group if that was the case. As I said, they won't risk people getting killed.
Hoaxes, or birds. Whatever UAPs are, Congress must be informed as...
Weather balloons and swamp gas. Don't leave that one out, Mike.
As must the people of the United States. We have a right to know what UAPs are, no matter what they are.
I don't want to be hard on him. I mean, he's very much on our side, this guy.
However, we now have existing and former U.S. government officials who have told Congress that Arrow and the Pentagon have broken the law by not revealing a significant body of information about UAPs, including military intelligence databases that have evidence of their existence as physical craft. One of those individuals is a current or former U.S. government official acting as a UAP whistleblower. This person has written a report. This is the report that says the executive branch has been managing UAP, NHI issues.
This is the guy. He won't name this person, but I mean, you can't. You know, a lot of the backslappers are saying, "Oh, it's just a nothing burger. It's another nothing burger." He says, "Oh, trust me, bro. I've got a secret source. I can't tell you who they are." I mean, I could do a 2-hour video just going through the reactions from the backslappers and the skeptics to this, and I'm not going to do that.
Congressional knowledge, oversight, or authorization for some time, quite possibly decades. Furthermore, these individuals have revealed the name of an active and highly secretive DoD unacknowledged special access program, or USAP. The source of that document told...
That's probably the DNI, the Department of Naval Intelligence, connected to the Area 51 Bob Lazar stuff.
That the USAP is a strategic intelligence program that is part of the U.S. military family of long-standing, highly sensitive programs dealing with various aspects of the UAP problem. The new UAP whistleblower claims that the U.S. military and IC database includes videos and images taken using infrared, forward-looking infrared, full-motion video, and still photography. The report that was just shared with Congress says Immaculate Constellation serves as a central or parent USAP that consolidates observations of UAPs by both tasked and untasked collection platforms. Immaculate Constellation.
But the thing is, Arrow is just like, say, Project Blue Book. But, you know, even back in the 50s and 60s, Hynek was saying, you know, this is what radicalized Hynek, because he was brought into Project Blue Book to investigate something he didn't believe in. He found out they were real and realized that this whole organization was just was just like hampering every effort he made. He realized, Hynek understood there was this is amazing parallels between those days and today. Hynek understood that there was a parallel program that was secret, which he wasn't involved in. Some of the personnel he was working with were, and they were the ones that were basically shackling him and hampering every effort he did and holding him back. So yeah, I mean, this is the same situation again.
It includes high-quality imagery intelligence and measurement and signature intelligence of UAPs, the whistleblowers report adds. The sources of this intelligence are a blend of directed and incidental collection capabilities, positioned in low Earth orbit, the upper atmosphere, as well as military and civilian aviation altitudes and marine.
This is what Ratcliffe says. You know, John Ratcliffe. He's now. I think he's bloody Secretary of Defense or something. Trump has made him SecDef or something like that. He's very high up. I think he's. Yeah, I think, or maybe he's on the. National Security Council, something like that. But anyway, John Ratcliffe, the guy who told us about the fact that satellites could see UFOs as well, is now on part of the new administration. I mean, goodness me, who's next? David Icke, Alex Jones? I mean, come on, Trump, give him a job.
Environments. The report to Congress details in detail various UAPs, including spheres, orbs, discs, saucers, ovals, triangles, boomerang, arrowhead, and irregular organic. The report describes various incidents found in the human intelligence data.
They're not plasma, are they, Mike? Come on, you can sell that.
One involved orbs surrounding and forcing an F-22 out of its patrol area. In another incident, the crew of a Navy aircraft carrier watched a small orange-red sphere rapidly descend from a high altitude of 100 to 200 yards directly above the flight deck of the CVN, or aircraft carrier. And since my reporting on this immaculate constellation last month, another source came forward.
That could be something Timothy Good mentioned, involving an aircraft carrier and an orange sphere. I wonder if it's the same case. I can't remember the details.
He told me that they saw a roughly 13-minute long, high-definition, full-color video of a white orb UAP coming out of the ocean approximately 20 miles off the coast of Kuwait. It was filmed from a helicopter. Then halfway through the video, the person said the orb is joined by another orb that briefly comes into the frame from the left before rapidly moving again out of the frame.
I'm just going to check my notes. I've sort of like kept them. Yeah, I think I've covered that. Yeah. The thing about Kuwait is interesting. Again, it's the USO near Kuwait, I say here.
The person discovered the video on SIPR, the Secure Internet Protocol Router Network, which the DoD uses to transmit classified information.
SIPR is the now this is something Action Forwards talks about related to MH370. If you remember, I did two entire videos about MH370. I mentioned Ashton Forbes. He says there's something called SIBRs, which is like a special satellite information network which detected the orbs that were I think there were four of them altogether, these orbs that were flying around the aircraft before it just vanished in a bright flash of light.
A leading UAP researcher who utilizes the Freedom of Information Act to find out what the government knows, John Greenwald, told me last year that the U.S. government had been increasingly...
John G. Jr. He got a shout out. He got a shout out in Congress. I wonder if he's mentioned it here. Hang on a sec. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. Here he is. Is he the black? Is this him? Yeah. Does he know he got a shout out, didn't he? Yeah. I'll have to go. I do follow it. Oh, why am I not following him? Hang on. Isn't that him? No, maybe it's not John. Well, I'm sure it's following. And John Green. Here we are. This is him. Sorry, it's wrong person. It's this one. Yeah. He's a fascinating guy. This, I mean, I don't agree with everything he says, but I think he's one of the most impressive people in this. One of the most impressive people in this field, actually. Okay, let's go back to this. I don't want too many asides.
Denying his request for UAP information, he has been doing FOIA requests for 27 years and has an archive of 3 million pages. The government has...
Is it true? He's literally 27 years. He's literally been sending off these FOIAs since he was a kid. He's now 40-something. That's dedication for you.
Decades denied any interest in UFOs, he told me, but the documents that he has assembled show that behind the scenes, it was a completely different story. Contrary to the hopes of many advocates of transparency, the government has been restricting more information since the leak of 3 UAP videos in 2017. The DoD organization AARO has...
There's been a backlash, yeah. I'll go into that. I'll talk about the backlash.
Been labeling many documents with a B7 exemption, which Greenwald says does not make any sense. They're stating that anything AARO does is involved in law enforcement investigation, which allows AARO to not release it.
Yeah, leprechauns. Remember, guys? It doesn't exist. It's like leprechauns.
Says the DoD has denied the existence of a UAP and ATIP-related records on multiple occasions, only to acknowledge them after an appeal was filed. He added that the Naval Air Systems Command in March 2022 stated they found no additional UAP videos.
Deny then admit. That's right. They deny it then admit it later and hope no one notices. A bit like the you-know-what medical treatment, where I can't say it because I want this on YouTube, but basically there was a medical treatment that was very, very widely promoted in 2020, 2021. which they said was safe and effective, but later on well, actually, you know, those guys who said there might be some risks and side effects and things, it turns out they were right after all. We banned them from Twitter, but, well, they were right along, and we admit it now.
It seems strange that they had 3, and only those 3, but other requests had been filed by the Black Vault, that's John Greenwald's group, to seek out more places UAPs might be hiding. Then, in September 2022, the Navy admitted that the UAP-related videos and photographs existed, but denied the request in full for their release, saying that the requested videos contain sensitive information that are classified and exempt from disclosure. The DoD will deny things on a Monday and then admit to it on a Friday, said Greenwald. He said the government can and does release videos that protect secret methods of capturing it. They fall back on the sensitive platform excuse a lot, he said. However, the on-screen information can be blurred and scrubbed. The metadata can be removed. I'll show you this example here. This is a presentation from the UATP task force. This is completely absurd. It's nuts, this level of censorship, of redaction on a document.
Look at that, yeah. Why publish it at all if you're going to redact that much?
It shows the redaction of how many reports they've collected.
Stanton Friedman had a document that he used to show regularly. It was literally pages and pages, and all the text on the page had been redacted. It was published, just a load of blank squares they sent him. And why? Why not just say, we're afraid we can't show you this?
For how many years? 2 of the 3 potential explanations are blacked out. The Pentagon, the intelligence community is treating us like children. It's time for us to know the truth about this. I think that we can handle it. Thank you very much.
Children, they treat us like we're a combination of children and farm animals. I mean, you got to admit, like, these bureaucrats, they have a very low opinion of us, don't they? They have a very, very low opinion of the people they govern. I mean, they seem to regard us literally as a combination of frightened, helpless little kids and quivering sheep in a barnyard. That we've got all the courage and self-discipline of like some little lamb in a field. I mean, that's how they see us. That is literally how they see us. You go, we want to prevent public panic, man. We want to prevent. I mean, bureaucrats are a type of backslapper. They are. We want to prevent public panic. You know. I mean, we're not panicking because we're superior. We're better than everyone else. But everyone else will panic because they're inferior to us. Disgusting people. There we go. Patronizing wankers.
Thank you. I would now like to recognize Mr. Gold for 5 minutes.
Okay, Mr. Gold.
Thank you, Chairwoman Mace, Chairman Grothman, Ranking Members Connolly and Garcia, Representative Moskowitz, and distinguished members of both subcommittees.
I mean, I'm grateful to say this guy's got good style the way he speaks.
All of you, as well as your intrepid staff, for the opportunity to testify, and would like to begin by discussing courage. Courage is what it takes to tackle this topic. Yeah. And courage in the face of adversity is what I see in front of me.
I wish this guy was head of NASA instead of Bill Nelson. As it was, he was like his subordinate or senior.
Beside me and behind me. For my introduction, I'm currently the Chief Growth Officer at Redwire Space and have had several leadership positions at NASA. That being said, I want to be clear that I'm...
By the way, I haven't been watching Jeremy's... When was it? If you spot where Jeremy makes like a hand signal, let me know, because I haven't been watching. So just remind me where it is in the video and I'll address it in the reply to comments. Okay.
Speaking exclusively on my own behalf, not for Redwire, NASA, or any other organization. However, I am here today to speak out for science. Science requires data, which should be collected without bias or prejudice. Yet, whenever the topic of UAP arises, those who wish to explore the phenomena are often confronted with resistance and ridicule. For example, members of the NASA UAP Independent Study Team, particularly those in academia, were mocked and even threatened for simply having the temerity to engage in the study of UAP.
That's actually true. In fact, the lady who took over as head of the independent group when what's her name, Spergel, dropped out, she didn't actually admit who she was at first because she'd received abuse online. And I mean, some of it's going to be from morons, of course, but some of it may well be from people a bit more sinister who have an actual agenda and have been doing it professionally.
Our best tool for unlocking the mystery of UAP is science, but we cannot conduct a proper inquiry if the stigma is so overwhelming that just daring to be part of a NASA research team elicits such a vitriolic response. Therefore, one of the most important actions that can be taken relative to exposing the truth of UAP is to combat the stigma. And this is where I believe that NASA can be eminently helpful. The NASA brand is synonymous with hope, optimism, and credibility. If you were to take a walk down the national...
Never a straight answer, yeah. Sorry, mate, I'm not a fan of your organization.
Mall, you would immediately see the NASA logo on t-shirts, hats, and bumper stickers. Few federal agencies enjoy this kind of popularity. I've never seen anyone wearing an Office of Personnel Management t-shirt.
That's true, I know. You do get like, it is like because of space enthusiasm, it is, yeah. But of course, I know lots of people wear NASA t-shirts and stuff, but still.
Which is why NASA could play such an influential role. Specifically, NASA could, with relatively little cost and effort, host symposia on UAP, or even just participate in existing panels examining the topic. NASA personnel,
I agree, actually. Yeah, that would be good.
stepping forward and participating in such discussions would make a powerful statement to the scientific community that UAP should be taken seriously.
You could let the NASA astronauts who spotted these things up in space speak out as well, like the guy, I forgot his name now, but he's the space shuttle commander who says, Houston, this is a discovery, we have the alien spacecraft under observance. Remember that? That was the time when he thought he was on the secure line, but he forgot, and he was kind of like, he was on like the open circuit, and he thought he'd switched over to the encrypted circuit, but suddenly he realized, oh my God, I made a mistake. He accidentally left the open. He accidentally spoke on the open circuit, something he should have said privately on the encrypted one. And you could just everyone in mission control is going, damn! God's sake, shut up! Oh, sorry. I'll switch over now. Why not let him speak out? How much does Mr. Gold know about this chap?
And research accordingly. In regard to research, NASA has vast archives, much of which may contain important UAP data. Again, for relatively little cost and effort, NASA could create an AI or ML algorithm that could search the agency's archives for anomalous phenomena. I suspect that such an effort would not only result in information
not an AI programmed to avoid the classified files, but yeah, I mean,
that will help us to understand UAP, but could result in data that will assist in other areas of scientific inquiry, such as anomalous weather or meteorite activity. Beyond its existing archives, NASA could act as a clearinghouse for civilian and commercial UAP data. During my work on the UAP independent study team, it quickly became evident that there is no clear or well-publicized process for civilian pilots to report UAP sightings.
Again, that takes us back to what was it? Who's saying it? Was it Moskowitz was saying? This takes us back to the civilian pilots issue. Whoever said that? I'm going to read all my old notes. That takes us back to that. Yeah, a good idea. Good idea. He could actually assist, couldn't he?
Sightings. The stigma associated with UAP hampers the number of pilots that would report such phenomena, but even for those who overcome the stigma, I believe the current FAA guidance is largely unknown and poorly understood. In order to effectively collect UAP data, the independent study team recommended the use of NASA's Aviation Safety Reporting System, or ASRS. This system, which is administered by NASA and funded by the FAA, provides a confidential means for the reporting of safety violations in a voluntary and non-punitive manner. Over 47 years, the ASRS has collected nearly 2 million reports. ASRS is the perfect tool to collect UAP data, which could then be collated by NASA and shared with the public at large. Leveraging ASRS could create a treasure trove of UAP data, potentially hundreds of thousands of reports, supporting this hearing's goal of exposing the truth. And I'm grateful to our two co-chairs and other members who have already incorporated this idea into proposed legislation. At this hearing, and as others have demonstrated, the UAP issue is justifiably dominated by national security and defense. However, I would urge the subcommittees to keep in mind the numerous ways that NASA and the FAA, as well as commercial activities in the air, in space, and in the water, can generate a massive amount of invaluable data on anomalous phenomena. I cannot help but be excited by the potential for such an endeavor, since scientific discovery is driven by anomalies. It's the existence and study of anomalies that led to the theory of relativity, quantum mechanics, and nearly all of humanity's scientific breakthroughs.
He's a great romantic, though. I like this man. He's very romantic.
This is why the study of UAPs should be embraced, since whatever is occurring, the chance to garner new knowledge should never be ignored. We must be thorough in collecting information, fearless in making conclusions, and open to following the data, no matter how mundane or extraordinary the results may be. I began this testimony by praising the Joint Subcommittee members for their courage, and I will end by echoing that sentiment. As the saying goes, the truth is out there. We just need to be bold enough and brave enough to face it.
Yay, good speech.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. I will now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questioning. I have a lot of questions and I have a lot of witnesses. So I would just ask if it's yes or no to please just tell me yes or no. If it requires more than that, be very succinct, because I would like to go down the line and ask as many questions as possible. So for the Admiral this morning first, former DoD official Chris Mellon reached out to you about satellite imagery from 2017 that depicts a UAP. What were the dates?
I knew Chris Mellon would get a shout out.
Dates in 2017 when this occurred.
I can't share with you the details, ma'am, but I can do it in a closed setting, and I can also tell you the agency that wrote a report on it.
Okay. So
right. See, this is where the backslappers will go. Oh, trust me, bro. Well, look, dates. I could put here in my comments. Dates, agency, ? Where? And he says skiff. Yeah.
who has the imagery?
I can tell you that in a closed setting.
Can you describe what was depicted in the satellite imagery? Just a description.
It was a UAP, ma'am.
That's it. No other description.
The term that the analysts used, they call it the button. It was a disc-shaped object.
Yeah, button. That's interesting. They gave it that nickname. You know, it's like Tic Tac, and they've given it the name Button. Yeah.
Okay, where was it?
I can't tell you that, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Okay, Mr. Elizondo, you state in your testimony that, quote, advanced technologies not by our government or any other government are monitoring sensitive military installations around the globe, end quote. If these technologies are not made by any government, who's making them? Private
Good question.
companies, or are you implying they are crafted by a non-human intelligence?
Well, ma'am, that's...
Well, I'll let him speak for himself, but it's obvious, isn't it?
Precisely why we're here. The problem is that, temporally speaking, over decades, not just the last 10 years, before, to put this in perspective, when
Are these private companies you're implying, or is this non-human intelligence?
it may be both.
Okay.
She was pushing him to give a more succinct answer, and he said it may be both.
When it comes to Blue Force Technologies, I would not be able to discuss.
Okay. Are you read into secret UAP crash retrieval programs?
We would have to have a conversation in a closed session, ma'am. I signed documentation 3 years ago that restricts my ability to discuss specifically crash retrievals. I submitted for my book through the DOPSR process, which took a year.
It's DOPSR, the Defense Officers Pre-Publication Review. This is where the backslappers go nuts, and they say, "Oh, he's wasting our time. He just says, trust me, bro. Can't tell you, can't give you the evidence, and all this sort of thing." For goodness' sake, look at the position he's in. For goodness' sake, you idiots. Just get off Elizondo's case. How would you cope if you were in his position? Bloody morons.
Reviewed, and what is in the book is what I was told I'm allowed to talk about.
Has the government conducted secret UAP crash retrieval programs? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yep. There you go.
Okay. Were they designed to identify and reverse engineer alien craft? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Does the U.S. government have any reverse? Okay, we already answered that question about retrieval programs. Do any U.S. contractors have the same?
I would prefer to address in a closed session, ma'am.
Okay. In your book, you mentioned government employees who've been injured by UAPs, placed on leave, and receiving government
She's read it. Good. She's read Lou's book.
compensation for their injuries. Is that correct?
That is correct.
How can the government deny we have recovered?
Well, this is interesting because this takes straight into John Burroughs, and I put it in the notes here. Government reverse engineering injuries. Burroughs. John Burroughs has received a full war pension, basically, thanks to Pat Fransconia, his lawyer. John Burroughs was in contact with in Christmas 1980. He was in contact with he encountered the craft in Rendlesham Forest, and he received injuries at the time, for which he was in a really bad way. For the rest of his life, he suffered health problems. His medical records were declassified at one point, and he almost died at one point because of this. And he received a general discharge pension when I think it's what they call it, when he should have received like a higher pension, honorable discharge or something like that. And he went to court with his lawyer, and they managed to get this done. So John Burroughs is an official UFO injured soldier, and there's many others as well in that position too.
Craft if they're paying people because they've been injured by recovered craft?
Ma'am, that's a great question. That's why I think we're here again, because I've seen the documentation by the U.S.
Placed on leave and receiving government compensation for their injuries. Is that correct?
That is correct.
How can the government deny we have recovered craft if they're paying people because they've been injured by recovered craft?
Hey, good question. Good question. Who gets paid compensation for encounters with unicorns and leprechauns and fairies? Who gets paid for encounters with kelpies? Come on. Again, I keep coming back to this same analogy.
Great question. That's why I think we're here again, because I've seen the documentation by the U.S. government for several of these individuals who have sustained injuries as a result of a UAP incident.
It's a crazy idea, right? The hypocrisy and the logic. Okay, Mr. Shellenberger.
She's on our side. She's confirmed that.
I'm going to say it again to be very clear. Immaculate Constellation. What's its mission and how are they funded?
Its mission is to, as I stated, its mission is to, it's an unacknowledged special access program. Its mission is to document UAPs.
Okay, and do you, for your story and your report, do you have more than one credible source?
I do.
Sourcing, okay. And then why do you believe your sources to be credible? How do you judge the veracity of the documentation you've been provided about this program?
That's a fair question.
I checked the sources, and they are who they say they are. They are current or former government officials. I want to also add that I did not specify that they were Defense Department employees. I didn't specify the agency nor the gender.
Would they have included non-government employees, people that aren't employed by the government?
I'm comfortable saying that these are government or previously government employees.
Any of them currently employed by a private contractor or private contractors?
I'd rather not say.
Okay.
She's now asking him questions that he either ones that he addressed in his opening comments or ones he can't talk about. And again, the backslappers will go, "Oh, he's on the UFO grift train, isn't he? He's on the UFO grift train." No, he's sitting in front. He's sworn an oath he could get into trouble for this. There's easier ways of making a fortune off lies than doing this.
What's the key takeaway, just a few seconds, about the Immaculate Constellation document you provided us today?
I think that what the American people need to know is that the U.S. military and intelligence community are sitting on a huge amount of visual and other information, still photos, video photos, other sensor information, and they have for a very long time. And it's not those fuzzy photos and videos that we've been given. There's very clear
high resolution. How many?
Yeah, of course. There's loads of these. A lot of this footage. People say they're seagulls and they're exhaust pipes. All right. That's just some of what's this. There's loads that have not been released yet.
Graphics, videos, photos.
I mean, I've been told hundreds, maybe thousands. I mean, I also wanted to say, because there was some conversation around concern around the revealing of these materials, revealing the source collections, but some of these are shot from helicopters using normal videos of oceans. I just think that's absurd that somehow you're going to be revealing some secret U.S. technology by revealing that you've photographed orbs off the coast of Kuwait.
Okay, thank you. 8 seconds. Mr. Gold, did the NASA independent study team get briefed on what you call OSAP? Very quickly.
I flagged the Advanced Aerospace Weapons System Classification Program to our chair and our DFO. We did not get briefed, but I believe it is definitely worth looking into. That was probably the largest UAP review effort ever, and I think produced a lot of interest data, including revealing Nimitz. I don't know if my fellow witness.
They said Nimitz there, yeah. But OSAP, of course, as you know, the Skinwalker team are not appearing.
Lou might want, he did yeoman's work on it, might want to comment.
Okay. All right, I'm going to turn to Mr. Moskowitz, who will be recognized for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So, Mr. Gold, you gave a whole diatribe for a couple of minutes about UAPs, science, data collection.
Diatribe? That sounds a bit... maybe I'm not American, it means something different. That sounds a bit derogatory.
And stigma. A lot of non-believers in all this would just ask a very simple question. Why? Why is it so hard? Right? Like, why are people, anytime they ask, why are they always thwarted? Why are they always judged? Why is they always have misinformation spread? Why is there always retribution? Why is it always met with an ear? What's the why? If it doesn't exist, why is it such a problem?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I've told you about my dad. I gave up asking questions about UFOs. I gave up talking to him about 20 years ago. And he says, a couple of months ago, he said, I saw this news story about UFOs. I remember you were into that, weren't you? It's like, my jaw dropped to the floor.
I think if you go through the history of science, Representative, it is always...
Of course, it gets a lot more serious than just like having an argument with your family, doesn't it?
difficult for breakthroughs and new information, regardless of whether it's UAP or any other kind of discovery. And in science, we're supposed to be open, but when you break with the orthodoxy of what's believed, whether it's Galileo saying that the Earth doesn't rotate or the Earth rotates around the sun, or the sun doesn't rotate around the Earth, it's always challenging for new beliefs. And the more extraordinary those discoveries, and the more extraordinary those new beliefs, it's very difficult. So I think this is natural. There's natural.
Yeah, it's ironic when you think about it, but the skeptics, the James Randys and the Richard Dawkinses of his day would have been treating Galileo like, like the woo-woos they always attack. They'd literally be talking, they'd be literally like that.
Conservatism that when it comes to science, but this issue in particular has been very difficult where, again, even to attempt to study it becomes problematic. But every hearing like this, every news report, every video, documentaries, as privileged to be part of something Dan Ferris.
I was trying to think of a name, like Deepak Chopra. Yeah, Deepak Chopra or Alistair McGrath or what's his name? Gary Schwartz, who came up, of course, in the last video I did. They were the Galileos of their day, and the ultra-rational scientific skeptics would be their biggest enemy.
Together, I think many of us have interviewed for it, over 30 different government officials. Every brick in the wall will help get us closer to getting to the truth.
I appreciate that. Mr. Elizondo, did I have that correct?
Sir.
I'm a recovering lawyer, so I'm going to put my hat on for a second. You said you signed a document. Love that. Who gave that to you?
The U.S. government, sir.
Yeah, you have a copy of it?
It is stored in a skiff right now. I do not have possession of it. The U.S. government does.
What department of the U.S. government gave you this document?
I will say the Department of Defense. Unfortunately, I can't say in this forum much more than that.
You specifically said the document said you can't talk about crash retrieval. Well, you can't talk about Fight Club if there's no Fight Club.
Good reference. Yeah, good reference. Yeah, he's the Department of Defense. That's all he can say, you see, backslappers. It's Lou Elizondo. He's a grifter. He won't tell us the evidence. Oh, my goodness me. Just... What was it the Amerindians say? Never judge a man until you've walked a mile in his moccasins.
Correct.
Okay, I'm just making an observation.
Yes, sir.
So that document that you signed, that you said exists, specifically said you can't talk about crash retrieval.
Correct, sir. It was a limitation on what because already I'd been speaking publicly about the topic, and so the document said you can continue saying X, Y, Z, but you cannot discuss the topic.
When you give me the atmosphere of signing this document. You're in a room by yourself?
I'm in a skiff with a security officer, sir.
Just one-on-one? Anybody else?
There may have been an assistant as well. It was in a skiff within a Department of Defense facility.
Give me your background.
Yeah, tell me some guys in dark suits and sunglasses, I bet, were there still sitting in the background,
Real quick.
My background is I went to school to study microbiology and immunology, entered into the U.S. Army, and after a very short stint in military intelligence, I became a counterintelligence special agent. As a civilian, later on I became a special agent in charge, running investigations in counterterrorism and counterespionage primarily, with some experience in counterinsurgency and counternarcotics. And then in the 2009 timeframe, when I came back to the Pentagon after a tour with the Director of National Intelligence, I quickly became part of a program that was originally called OSAP that evolved into the program now called ATIP, which is where those videos that we now see, the Go Fast, the Gimbal, the FLIR, that was part of our effort, sir.
Right, so you're not
OSAP evolved into ATIP. Yeah, ATIP was his private project, but it was real. The skeptics say, "Oh, no, he made it up. He made it up." And the backslappers go, "He's just a grifter. Oh, I can see through it because I know he's a shill, man. And he's trying to take us away from the truth, man. And only I can see it because I'm so superior to you." Yeah.
Conspiracy theorist. You actually have a legitimate background.
Well, sir, I'm certainly not a conspiracy theorist. I'm fact-based, just say facts.
So when you're in this room...
There's nothing to be ashamed of, Lou. It's the only sensible way to be today. Don't be afraid of the word.
I want to paint the picture for everybody. You're in this room, you're by yourself, you're in a skiff, you're handed a document. How long is the document?
It's about a page front and back. So basically you have some things they call trigraphs, which I cannot, again, talk.
How long were you given to sign the document?
As long as I needed, sir.
And what if you didn't sign it?
Well, I suspect there'd be repercussions. I wouldn't have access to certain information.
Were you allowed to ask a lawyer, or weren't allowed to ask for a lawyer to review the document?
It was an option, but they probably wouldn't have allowed me to, because the document itself is pretty explicit about you have to be putting me in an interest. I'm trying to thread the needle here.
It would have to be a particular type of lawyer, wouldn't it? Yeah, it would have to be a particular type of lawyer.
There are certain documents that we have in the U.S. government that allow people to have access to certain programs, whether it's a special, and I'm going to be very generic here, whether it's a special access program or controlled access program, SAP, CAP, whatnot.
How many people have to sign that document?
It depends how many people are going to get access to the information, sir.
Okay. Last question. Doctor, real quick, can you tell us about the Omaha incident in greater detail? I've read your background, right? Some people would label you as a member of
the Omaha incident is supposedly the thing with the bow key. This is a coastal patrol ship in which large numbers of strange objects were seen circling it. This was detected on radar. One was seen entering the water. No, sorry, I'm getting it mixed up with USS Kidd. No, US Omaha was the one where the object went splash into the water. You can actually hear someone in the control room say "splash" in the Combat Information Center, which means it's hit the water. That was the Omaha.
Deep state, since you work in government for a long period of time. But
he mentioned the deep state. Yeah, bloody hell, man, this guy switched on.
Can you tell us more about that incident? You've written a lot about that.
I wrote a lot about incidents like it, Congressman, but that specific incident involved the USS Omaha, the littoral combat ship of the U.S. Navy operating off Southern California. I don't remember the exact date. It was within the last decade. And what the watchstanders on the bridge observed was a UAP, again, something that was aloft but had no observable exhaust or control surfaces. So it was something that couldn't be explained. And then they saw it enter the water.
One of the observables.
From the atmosphere and going through the air-sea interface. And so thus exhibiting transmedium travel.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. I'll now recognize
That's two of the observables there. The lack of control surfaces and visible forms of lift and transmedium.
Grothman for 5 minutes of questioning.
Yeah, we'll start with Mr. Gallaudet. During a previous UAP hearing, Navy Commander David Fravor discussed the TikTok object engaged in 2004. Are you familiar with the incident, the TikTok incident?
Yes, sir.
And that's almost 20 years ago, right?
Yes, sir.
It's been said there are more videos, documents, and reports related to this incident.
20 whole years. Can you believe it? 20 whole bloody years.
Do you believe the information regarding the TikTok incident should be available to all members of Congress? And in your expertise, what reason would the Department of Defense possibly have for not releasing information that's over 20 years old?
Thank you, Congressman. I don't think there's any good reason to withhold information and important data, especially of national security concern from Congress.
What would they say?
I will speculate, sir, that they don't want to share that kind of information because it reveals weaknesses in our ability to monitor and protect our airspace.
Oh, this is the old argument. Well, we can't tell you because if we release this data, it includes information on the sensor capabilities of the ships and the aircraft. That's what it's about. But I mean, again, as we've heard earlier on, you can have some of the information redacted. It is possible to redact some of that information. It is possible to release the context in terms of the UFO side of things, the ufology elements, without giving away the classified information related to the capabilities of the ships and aircraft.
Okay. In your written testimony, you claim last year's UAP hearing before this Oversight Committee confirmed that UAP-related information is, well, it's not only being withheld, but that elements of the government are engaging in a disinformation campaign to include personal attacks designed to discredit UAP whistleblowers. Could you elaborate on that statement a little?
Yes, sir. Earlier this year, I met with the DoD's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, and what I thought would be a 90-minute meeting just to meet with leadership turned out to be an hours-long influence operation on me, where they attempted to convince me of the validity of the very flawed and error-ridden historical records report. In addition, they tried to have me question very valid UAP reports like the Tic Tac incident, and even coming to stating possibly that the Tic Tac was American technology. And then, of course, if you ask David Fravor or Alex Dietrich, the two witnesses, they were convinced it was otherwise. And then,
yeah, they wouldn't, as I said earlier, they wouldn't fly secret American technology near a U.S. Navy battle group. That will get people killed.
And they also cast discredit on various UAP whistleblowers and witnesses to question their validity and credibility as witnesses.
Okay.
Yep, they always do this. What they do is, and this has happened to me. This has happened to me when I've been assessed by psychologists during various issues to do with my daughter when she was a child. Are you sure? They use this voice. Maybe you, if you think about it, you'll realize that the psychologist was right. It's like they say, it's like this ridiculous phrase you hear from wokies. Maybe you are a racist and you don't know it. How can you be a racist and not know it? I mean, and they're saying, well, maybe it wasn't aliens, maybe it wasn't, and they'll say this. Are you sure? Have you thought about this? They're very, very good. As I said, I've been targeted by one of the top psychological warfare agents in the entire world, Isabel Menzies-Lythe. And she had this way of getting, especially when I was a kid, she had this way of getting inside my head and sort of like confusing my thoughts. And it looks like they tried to do that to Admiral Gallaudet. Yeah, that was a very interesting piece of testimony he's just given.
We'll go to Mr. Elizondo. We got that right, or not? At least
Elizondo.
You're familiar with the recent drone incursion over Langley Air Force Base?
Yes, sir.
The owners of these drones remain unclear. The U.S. military has not been able to give us in Congress an answer. Given your experience with the Department of Defense and the intelligence community, how frequently are UAP sightings over military installations? And secondly, I suppose hypothetically, you could have incursions over just, say, regular airports. Is it obvious these incursions are more likely over?
Yeah, like Chicago. There was that was it 2006? There was that big thing seen over Chicago.
Military facilities and just a random airport out there.
Yes, sir. There's definitely enough data to suggest that there is certainly some sort of relationship between sensitive U.S. military installations, also some of our nuclear equities, and also some of our Department of Energy sites. There is a long historical record that some of your colleagues may have, documentation that demonstrates this. This is not a new trend. This has been going on for decades, and that information has been obfuscated, unfortunately, from folks like you in this committee. And I think that's problematic because ultimately, at the end of the day, we have a significant situation here. We have something that can enter into U.S. airspace completely with no attribution.
And how long has this been going on?
Yeah, it's a good point. So he has confirmed what I just said, that even though they appear everywhere, these objects, there's a trend of them focusing and clustering around particular areas. And this is very often, like I say, Department of Energy, Department of Defense sites. Department of Energy meaning nuclear, very often nuclear weapons research, as well as nuclear energy. So yeah, that's an interesting thing. What happened at Chicago O'Hare in 2006? It could happen over a military site all the time. I mean, every day or every week. I myself took a photograph in Scotland when I was on holiday, and you can see in the background, I've done an entire video on this, you can see in the background like a little disc-shaped object. I didn't spot it at the time. It was only later when the photo was developed. I had it on a single-use fun camera. So yeah, that's there does seem to be that trend, which we can maybe it's the only thing we can actually glean from our analysis of UFO behavior.
Sir, decades, and there's information that will hopefully be entered into.
Can you think of any possible reason why they can't release any information they have on something, say, 15 or 20 years old?
Sir, if I could echo my colleague here, Admiral Gallaudet, I think one of the big issues that we have in the intelligence community and Department of Defense is we don't want to broadcast any potential vulnerabilities or weaknesses in our national defense systems or on intelligence collection platforms. Therefore, when you have a conversation where you address a problem for which there is no solution, it makes that a very uncomfortable conversation to have.
Okay, we'll switch to Mr. Shellenberger.
See, basically, they don't want to admit. They can't stop them. They don't want to admit that the fact that these things can penetrate nuclear silos. They don't want to admit that these things can abduct people from their beds or from their cars or when they're walking their dog, and there's nothing the government can do to stop it. Yeah.
Primary reason you're here today is because you published an article on the news publication that you own called Public, right? Alleging that a new unnamed government whistleblower has come forward asserting that a highly classified program exists dedicated to recovery and reverse engineering of UAP technologies. Can you give us what specific evidence you have or that your source provided you to substantiate the claims about the existence of the Immaculate Constellation program?
Well, you have the report in front of you now, so you can see it for yourself. I checked the report, and I did not find it based on existing cases. It was new cases for me. I hadn't found anybody. So that answered for me that it was not obviously circular reporting, which is one of the big concerns in the space. I also had the name of the program confirmed by more than one additional source. So yeah, and then of course I checked to make sure that the source was who they claimed to be.
I should point out, Shellenberger is not just a UFO person. UFOs is just one of the many things he deals with. In fact, if you Google him, if you wiki him, hang on, you see Michael Shellenberger, author. If you actually Google him, just go to his wiki page. Here we go. It says here, author, journalist, wide range of topic, free speech, homelessness, environment, co-founder of the Breakthrough Incident, the California Peace Coalition, nuclear non-profit environmental progress. So this is the UFO thing. It probably may not even be mentioned here. Actually, it may, it's here we. Oh, see, you've got to go all the way down to here. There's just one little paragraph here reporting on alleged U.S. government crash retrieval of non-human craft. There you go. This is literally only this is only a small part of his entire bio.
Okay. I should also say that when I said before it was this database, it is a much broader program than that. It also includes human intelligence, and then, as you mentioned, the retrieval and the
Any knowledge of what country these things originated in?
No, I have no idea.
Zeta Reticuli, if you can call that a country.
Okay.
Okay, I will now recognize Mr. Burchett for 5 minutes of questions.
Thanks, Chair Lady. I request unanimous consent to enter into the record documents provided to us regarding legacy UAP
Yay,
programs
good
and
old
psychological
Tim.
operations.
Go Tim.
Go Tim. Also want to thank my buddy Jeremy Corbell for providing these documents and access to some whistleblowers. Mr. Elizondo, what is your last position with the federal government?
Sir, I was the Director of National Programs Special Management Staff, managing a White House Special Access Program on behalf of the National Security Council.
How would you characterize UAPs?
An enigma, sir, and a frustration. We're talking about technologies that can outperform anything we have in our inventory. And if this was an adversarial technology, this would be an intelligence failure eclipsing that of 9/11 by an order of magnitude.
Are there classified Department of Defense materials related to UAPs that you believe could be safely disclosed to the public without compromising national security?
Yes, sir, I do. I would never, ever try to endorse providing some sort of information that could compromise what we call a blue force technology or capability. But I do believe there's a lot of
Blue Force. I never heard the phrase blue force before. It's interesting. If you're American military, maybe you could tell me more about that.
Information regarding this topic, and I've been very vocal about it, that should be shared not only with the public, but most importantly, with members of Congress.
Are you familiar with my friend David Grush?
Absolutely, sir. I had the privilege and honor of working with him myself several years ago at U.S. Space Force.
Last year, as you know, he testified that the U.S. has run a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval.
U.S. Space Force. I've done several videos on the U.S. Space Force, if you want to know. This was a Trump creation after the 2016 election. What it'll mean now with the return of Trump, I don't know, but it's interesting.
Retrieval and reverse engineering program. Would you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Are there UAP programs operating?
There you go. This is the first time Elizondo has actually confirmed in Congress that he's backing up David Grush. He's said so many times in interviews and things like this, but he's saying it officially under oath now. That's very important.
Without proper congressional oversight?
100%.
What are they?
Unfortunately, sir, I would have to have that conversation in a closed session.
I know you said that. A lot of people are frustrated.
Trust me, bro. Oh, God, these backslappers piss me off. Leave the man alone. He's doing what he can.
With those kind of answers, we're asking those kind of questions so you all know what the heck we're up against. You also mentioned in your opening statement that the Pentagon's Public Affairs Office employs a psychological operations officer as a singular point of contact for UAP-related inquiries. Why the heck would they do that?
So that's a great question. I would ask the Pentagon. There's a long history here of that individual providing misleading and false information to the public through various news outlets and media outlets.
Who's he talking? And right, I think he's talking about Susan Goff. I don't know specifically. He is not going to mention. He's not going to name this person, but I think it's Susan Goff. Now, this is the woman she always answers UFO inquiries. She's the one who fobbed off Anthony Bragalia. She's the one Greenwald has had a lot to deal with. She seems to be some kind of gatekeeper when it comes to this subject. I don't know exactly what her role is, but she sent back like a 111-page document to Anthony Bragalia, and it had just 9 pages in or something like that.
In order to discredit this topic, I've personally been victim to it. We have the documentation to substantiate where this information has been absolutely inaccurate, that has been provided time and time again, and it turns out that individual was also working with former leadership of Aero at the time as well.
And we punish them by giving them multi-million dollars more than they ask for every year. Admiral Gallaudet, you mentioned in your
Oh, I love Tim Burchett. He's just so sanguine, and he does great one-liners.
Opening statement on an email you received from the operations officer of the Fleet Forces Command regarding unknown objects almost colliding with U.S. military planes. Did anyone respond with knowledge of what the objects were?
I received no response, sir.
Did the exercise get canceled?
The exercise did not get canceled.
Why do you think the commander of Fleet Forces operations officer never discussed the incident again?
Sir, I'm speculating because I didn't have an exchange with him, but I believed it to be part of a special access program, the information and the video, which we know now it was. And he realized he couldn't share that openly with the recipients of the email, and therefore the email was pulled from everybody's account.
Again, tell us what happened to the email from the commander of Fleet Forces.
Again, this must be some kind of intranet thing, because if it was pulling you to have control over someone else's email account only works if you have control of the particular organization, like the @ that they're involved in. Only then can you have administrative powers over someone else's email.
Forces.
The day after I received it, and all the other recipients received it, which were all the subordinate commanders of U.S. Fleet Forces, so 1- and 2-star admirals, including strike group commanders, the email was wiped or deleted from our accounts, and then no one talked about it.
All right. Have you specifically had any experience with submersible objects?
So I've no personal experience, but I've had witnesses on submarines come to me and say they've seen on sonar data.
Correct.
All right, right. Now this is where you get into a good example of this is the one and only Milton William Cooper. Bill Cooper, author of Behold a Pale Horse, a conspiratorial classic. Cooper is actually on a surface submarine. He was on the bridge on lookout duty, and a large object the size of an aircraft carrier came out of the water and flew off. When he got back to his base at Pearl Harbor, he was grilled by these civilians in dark suits. It's the classic thing. What did you see, sailor? I saw this. You saw nothing. Do you understand me? If you say anything about this, you're in big trouble. You know, it's the usual thing. But that actually inspired Bill to take the path he did, to have his radio show, to write his books and things like that. But yeah, I mean, there's other examples of people from submarines and again, detected thing. What he's talking about here though is acoustic data from dived submarines.
Okay. How would you characterize those, and how do they move?
The one instance that was revealed to me was in the 80s on a nuclear-powered submarine, a ballistic missile submarine, that the object exhibited the characteristics of a Russian torpedo in terms of its speed of movement and closing rate with the submarine, and then it slowed and followed the submarine slowly in its wake for a period of minutes, and then rapidly exited the scene. And nothing that we know of and technology-wise could replicate that.
And the speed of these objects was faster than anything that we have or anybody else has that would be manned. Is that correct?
It was on the order
Underwater.
of a torpedo. So
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. But as it exited,
Well, I don't exactly know how fast a torpedo is, but I expect it does better than my old outboard Scott Atwater. So I'll take that as a yes. Okay. Have you experienced?
This is amazing. This was a submarine that was, as I said, it's like a torpedo. This was a submarine armed with strategic ballistic missiles like Trident in the 80s. Like, yeah, changed, and that's it's obviously giving off some kind of acoustic signature, so it's making noise, which could be picked up by the submarine's hydrophones. So it's not trying to hide. Normally, a submarine, if it was another submarine, it would be much quieter. It would do everything it could not to give off any acoustic signature. It would avoid emitting noise as much as possible. Everything on a submarine is designed to make it as quiet as possible, because when it's down deep, that's the only way you can detect it. It's the only sensory input that another submarine would have, or a ship or an aircraft with sonar buoys trying to detect it. So this thing obviously didn't mind being spotted by the people on the crew of the submarine, the ballistic missile submarine. Yeah. But obviously, if it's going to, again, exiting the water, it's transmedium. It's one of the observables. Or exiting the scene. Did he say exiting the water or exiting the scene? Either way, it went away. It went away very, very quickly.
Any experience with the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, AARO?
Yes, Congressman, as I mentioned previously, I have met with them.
Okay. You heard Mr. Elizondo describe psychological operations for those contacting the Department of Defense about UAPs. You mentioned a similar influence operation by AARO. Why are federal agencies invested in running information operations about UAPs if they do not exist?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. But I'll make a statement on AARO's behalf. They have new leadership.
I should say, I don't want to go into too much detail about this, because it's actually painful for me to think about. But one of the things, it may not surprise you to know that Isabel Menzies Lythe was a massive, massive skeptic. On the few occasions I brought up any of my ideas on these matters, and this is when I was a child, I was quite young, talking about the UFO book I read and things like that when I was a kid, she was, I'd say, almost violently dismissive. Absolute nonsense, absolute nonsense. You're completely wrong. She would just like be very, very aggressive with me, very, very sharp, very scathing. And of course, my mother would sort of join in on her, and this is why it's so painful, because my own mother was sort of like controlled by her. I won't say any more than that, but take it apart, she was a complete skeptic. It's interesting that a psychological warfare expert, one of the top psychological warfare experts in the world, should be such a massive skepper.
This has reached out to me to meet again, and I take that as a good faith effort, and we'll see where that goes.
Thank you, Chair Lady. I've run over.
Thank you, Mr. Tennessee. I would now like to recognize Mr. Higgins. You're the king of Tennessee. Mr. Higgins, you're recognized for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Elizondo, Mr. Shellenberger notes in the report that
he looks like a badass, doesn't he? He really does. He's the sort of guy you can see going down the street like this. Don't mess with me.
Given for this hearing. I believe, Mr. Shellenberger, let me shift you with the author of this report.
I'm sorry, sir. I'm not the author.
Mr. Shellenberger, were you the author of this report? There's no name on it.
No.
Do you know the author?
I do.
You do. And how would you estimate that madam or gentleman, the author?
The person is a current or former U.S. government employee.
And it states here that this is the public version of the author's report.
Yes.
Look who's sitting next to him. Look, it's Marjorie Taylor Greene. It says Miss Green. She's not there. MTG didn't turn up. Oh, Marjorie, come on. You told Emily Maitlis to fuck off and you can't turn up at a UFO hearing. Come on, you can do better than that.
Where might one find the non-public version of the author's report?
I don't know the answer to that.
Would that be with the Department of Defense?
I don't know.
But you do know
he's just going through his source, isn't he?
The author.
I do.
You know what the author's sources were?
The author's sources are described in the report. These databases, the Immaculate Constellation.
Right, but you expressed some
What this guy's doing, Higgins, he's trying to get Shellenberger to reveal stuff he doesn't want to reveal. He'd be absolutely excellent. You can just imagine him like in a police interrogation. He'd be brilliant.
confidence in the sources.
I would.
Earlier in testimony, you expressed confidence. So do you know those sources?
I do.
Are they within the Department of Defense?
I can't say.
You can't say or you won't say?
I won't say.
So why not?
Because I protect my sources, and I think they're.
But you're not naming them. It's a big department. But many of us on my side of the aisle would say it's far too big. So you're talking about the Department of Defense, sources from within the Department of Defense?
I'm not willing to reduce the potential universe of where my sources might be.
Okay, moving on. In this report, Mr. Elizondo, for reference, several types of allegedly alien craft or possibly alien craft or unknown aerial phenomena, what we used to call UFOs, are described. Spheres and orbs, disc and saucers, oval or tic-tac, triangular shape, boomerang and arrowhead, and irregular or organic. Mr. Elizondo, does that summarize to you the types of craft that we're discussing today?
So that is a general morphology, historically speaking, of many UAP.
So those descriptions.
Yeah, there are differences in terms of that general morphology. There are exceptions. I mean, someone I know on Twitter sent me details of an event that I read about it in Timothy Good's book, where a man in Poland, I believe, just encountered these strange humanoids with big black suits and a hood, and their spacecraft actually looked a bit like a flying garden shed. I'm not kidding.
Is it a very different craft? Is it your assessment that they would come of different origins?
It's possible, but it also could be in sense a matter of utility. And let me just say for the record, I never read the report that.
I mean, in my view, they probably come from. Maybe I said something here. They probably come from very different. There's a number of different species involved here. They are from different. They're probably from lots and lots of different sources in terms of planetary sources, universal sources, things like that. There are clearly you get like greys, Nordics, mantids. There are many different species involved. They exhibit a wide range of behaviors, and they seem to have very different agendas. So I would have answered it that way. I mean, I don't think Elizondo would be breaking any rules by speculating in that area.
Or the article that Mr. Shellenberger put out. The reason
That's a good point. We're just referencing it,
yes, sir,
for descriptive purposes for the American people. Mr. Shellenberger, in this report, it's striking to me that regarding the descriptions of experiences with these various craft, several of them include biological effects and several do not. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Okay, so spheres and orbs, triangular craft, and irregular or organic craft include some descriptions of biological effects, including.
Oh, right, yeah, biological. This is, psychological effects, bioeffects. Yes, definitely.
Feelings of unease, electronic device malfunctions, long-term psychological effects such as anxiety or insomnia have been noted. Feeling of being watched.
Yeah, this is very often the case with. This is very often the case of people who are abductees, as well as you can just have a one-off encounter, just a single close encounter, but it's very often these things are repeated, and biological and psychological effects are often present with them. So, good example being Tina Bird, who I've interviewed.
A shared awareness with the triangle craft, and under the irregular and organic craft, biological effects include physical sensations of warmth or cold and unexplained smells and psychological distress. So these are very specific descriptions of the reactions of human beings, which allegedly have been noted from a study here, a report. All of those experiences would have been described by the sources that the author used.
I'm not sure I understand.
This is a very broad description of biological effects, and it's striking to me that they are present with relation to some types of craft, but absent in others. This would require a great deal of research and study. Can you explain that?
My understanding is that this is the database is very large.
Well, I mean, to be honest, before Shellenberger answers, I think just an amateur cursory assessment and audit of ufological evidence would say that. I mean, I am well aware that there are some particular kinds of craft and some particular kind of creatures which tend to be associated with certain effects on their human people, on the humans they interact with.
It includes both the images, the videos, the still images, as well as the human intelligence, the reports, the raw data from individuals having these experiences. So in answer to your question, yeah, I mean, I think we're looking at a very large amount of data collected over many decades.
And that data is held by the Department of Defense?
Well, I will say that after I published, I was told that this program, that the USAP was actually managed by the Department of Defense, but held at the White House.
Roger
but that's
that.
a single
Right.
source, and I don't have
That's
multiple sources to
interesting.
verify that.
Thank you, sir. I did my best to trick an answer out of you. I was partially successful. Madam Chair, I yield.
Thank you. I now recognize Mr. Frost for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In addition to serving on this committee, the Oversight Committee, I also serve on the Science, Space, and Technology Committee, where we often discuss how essential data and evidence are used in science and used at departments such as NASA. During a hearing, NASA Administrator Nelson affirmed the importance of NASA in helping us to understand UAP. Mr. Gold, if the government...
Oh, he must have been at that. He must have been in that hearing with... yeah, Mr. Frost must have been in that hearing that I talked about, the one where James Fox asked those brilliant questions. I think I did. Didn't I do a video about that? I certainly did an article about. That's where Bill Nelson was talking, and there was Spergel and all the others doing their little talk, and the various people came, and the various usually English female scientists came up and they said things. And then Fox got up and he asked them some really tough questions. So this guy Frost was there too.
Doesn't have the data it needs on UAP because, say, someone who saw something is concerned about stigma, public backlash, etc., or maybe there's just not good systems in place. How are we supposed to ultimately figure out what's going on?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And let me compliment Administrator Nelson that there wouldn't have been a UAP independent study team if it wasn't for his leadership and courage. We're talking about data and where we can get data from. As I described, NASA has whole archives of data, much of which I believe will likely have information that will help inform UAP. We need only look.
Do you know? You say I believe. Don't you know? Have you seen these archives? How much of it do you have access to, Mr. Gold?
And again, in an era with AI and ML, we can relatively quickly and easily go through it. So I think it's something that we should encourage NASA to do. However, per Chairman Groffman's comment about UAP focusing on national security sites, I believe there's something, sir, that you may have heard called sensor bias. That because we've got more cameras, more monitoring of national security, we don't know how extensive UAP activity may be over civilian areas. And this is the second part of your question, where we're not collecting the data. We're not collecting sufficient data from pilots. We're not collecting sufficient data from civilian and commercial activities. And this is, again, where ASRS, I think, could substantially change that, get the data out there, and allow us to do good science.
Thank you. I mean, on the data, I'm a really big proponent of transparency. But obviously, there's always a little bit of balance that we have to have in government on transparency as well. I mean, last year, NASA appointed a director of UAP research in response to the recommendation by the independent study team. In the final report, there's a quote: "Despite numerous accounts and visuals, the absence of consistent, detailed,
This was the person. It took a long time even to find out who she was because of the abuse. As I said, she got a lot of abuse, partly from dickheads, but also from. I think it was some organized institutional harassment she received too.
Curated observations means we do not presently have the body of data needed to make definite and scientific conclusions about UAP." Can you just talk really quickly about that balance of security and transparency?
So I can say, having served at NASA, it is the most transparent organization I've ever been in. When we would have conversations of executive leadership, things would leak out almost instantly. So I can assure you, intentionally or not, NASA's very transparent.
Oh, don't be naive. You've just said you believe there's archives where and you don't say what's in them. Come on. You don't know everything. You're not told everything. And I bet he probably knows more than Bill Nelson. The higher up you are in terms of the public-facing administration of NASA, the less they're going to tell you.
I don't know if any of you worked with engineers or scientists. They love to talk. So I believe that NASA is a paradigm of transparency, but we must have the ability and the data to be able to be transparent with. And if we're not gathering that, if we're not looking at it, then we can't bring NASA into the game and get to that good science that you need.
You know, it was about a year ago, I was touring a facility with a pretty senior government official. We went by a certain hangar and they said, yeah, that's, a company leases that out. We don't really know what's going on in there. What? We have no way of knowing what's going on in there. And there's a few of those, in fact, while we were driving around this facility.
Jesus.
To what extent do you think that some...
Did he just say what I said he thought? I made a note here. Frost tours NASA facility past secret room, experimental aircraft, ? Space exploration. This was in this, what Gold was calling the most transparent agency he's ever worked for. Well, where has he worked? Where did he work before? I know there's some village shop somewhere where all the gossip is exchanged. For goodness sake. What Mr. Frost here is saying is kind of contradicting what Gold just said.
Some of the UAP out there comes from off the books or unauthorized experimental aircraft.
I mean, I think probably the vast majority of UAP are drones, experimental aircraft, weather conditions, which is again why I say.
I think some of them might be, and we can argue over proportions, but clearly this is not an explanation for the entire phenomenon. And indeed, there is quite a fashionable idea now to say that they are this. And not only that, indeed, Annie Jacobsen makes this point in her book, that all of modern UFO culture exists for one purpose alone. It's a piece of engineered neo-mythology to launder these more down-to-earth secrets without asking a very obvious question. I'm one of the few people who actually asked this question. Wouldn't that backfire rather badly, drawing attention towards something with the ultimate objective of deflecting it away? Imagine two bank robbers who... Sorry, you've heard that one before, haven't you? Anyway, let's just carry on.
If we review the data, I think we're going to discover a lot about things we weren't even thinking about. But there is a percentage that isn't. And looking into those anomalies is how discoveries will be made. And relative to science, Congressman, if I can say, when NASA studies black holes, when NASA studies galaxies, we have instruments that are tailored to do so. With UAP, we're using cockpit gun cameras or cell phones. We could never do good science with that. And let me tell you, the NASA budget is under pressure.
That's kind of what Avi Loeb is trying to amend that right now with his Galileo project. Yeah.
We need to make sure that the Artemis program is funded fully. We need to beat China to the moon and maintain our presence in low Earth orbit. So NASA would need more.
Too late. China have already got there. Of course, they're not admitting it, but I'm sure they have astronauts already on the moon.
Money to do this, but I think tailored instruments that would look at UAP in the same way that we have tailored instruments to look at astronomical data is important to gathering valuable and uniform information. If we were studying black holes by using fighter cockpit cameras, we probably wouldn't know that much about black holes.
100%. Well,
he's probably right, actually, and indeed, this is why Avi Loeb did what he did. Avi Loeb is I forgot his name, he's a formal title, but he's basically head of astronomy and astrophysics at Harvard University. He's very, very senior. I mean, Avi Loeb, as you know, is another of these heroic figures in this community. His Galileo project is essentially an international skywatching effort using exactly the kind of methods and equipment and evidence gathering systems that Gold is advocating for NASA.
I think it's important that federal leaders take the necessary steps to ensure that UAP does not pose threats to the American public as well, and that we have the necessary budgets to collect this data so we can actually see what's going on. And I'm fully supportive of funding the Artemis mission. I think it's very important. Also, a personal note, the pilot is a frat brother of mine. He is a member of the Phi Beta Sigma fraternity incorporated, and so I would love to see my fraternity make it to the moon.
Red Wire's
I should point out, this is where I'm sure all the backslappers are going to go nuts now. And they say, he's in the Illuminati because he's a member of Phi Beta Sigma and all stuff like this. All right. I live in Oxford. I know that there are certain societies within the university. I'm a townie, not a gownie. But even I know, for example, about the Bullingdon Club, which is a bit infamous because Boris Johnson and David Cameron were in it. And there's many, many others. There's the Cone Society, etc., etc. Some are quite sinister. Of course, we know about the strange goings on at the tomb in Yale. You know, the Skull and Bones, yeah, where it seems to be some connection there to political power. Yeah, to be honest, most of these fraternities, including the one Mr. Frost is a member of, because they're just harmless frivolities, and they're just harmless bit of university fun. That's all they are. It's like the Dead Poets Society, you know, which is actually a very good film with Robin Williams. So yeah. So please don't think that this guy Frost is some kind of deep state infiltrator just because he's a member of a secret society. If he was a member of any kind of secret society that was in any way sinister and connected to the Illuminati, he wouldn't bring it up at this hearing. But apparently one of his fraternity members is one of the pilots on Artemis. So, well, if it ever gets off the ground, look at the videos I've made with the Apollo detectives, and you'll know more about that.
Cameras for Artemis, so we will take some pictures of your frat brother and get them.
There we go. Thank you so much. I yield back.
Thank you. I will now recognize Ms. Luna for 5 minutes.
Mr. Elizondo, to your knowledge, can you name the country and around time frame, but the first back in June?
She's another of these heroic figures. She's the one who went into the skiffs with Moskowitz, and that's where they've heard some really good things. So she's been really, really good, this lady.
Back engineered UAP program started.
Ma'am, unfortunately, I would not be able to have that conversation in public.
Can anyone on the panel name that? None of you? Okay. This next question is for Mr. Gallaudet. To your knowledge, have any USOs ever outpaced our submarines?
Yes, ma'am.
He just said, didn't he? He just said here. Yes, I mean, he just described. He just described. Earlier on, Gallaudet described an object that was going the speed of a torpedo, and then it slowed down and changed course. Yeah.
At what magnitude?
I don't have the exact speed, but again, a witness came to me, a credible former submarine officer who observed it on sonar data. And this was in the 80s in the North Atlantic during a storm, and it outpaced his submarine by orders of magnitude.
Are you aware of any hotspots that currently exist off our?
All right, I should point out that this may, I put here USS Sturgeon. Are you familiar with the Sturgeon photos? I won't go and show you them now, but you can just Google USS Sturgeon, as in the fish, USS Sturgeon and UFOs, because what basically happened was, I think it was in 1970 or 71, American submarine, took some periscope photos through the periscope of a strange object, black-colored tic-tac-like object, just above the ocean surface. And there's a whole story connected to this involving, I think, what's his name was involved. He was a junior officer. He later became a submarine captain, and I think, oh God, I can't remember the details. But anyway, you can look it up. But Paul Stonehill has written about it. It's a very, very interesting case indeed.
Our shores in North America.
Not with sufficiently credible data, ma'am.
Okay, we've heard reports of there potentially being hotspots, maybe entry and exit points. Have you heard of any of that?
I have not, ma'am, but my colleague here, Mr. Elizondo, does discuss some USO activity that he's observed.
What's he mean by what's she mean by hotspots and entry and exit points? I suspect this may have something to do with what Danny Sheehan was talking about, underwater bases. I mean, of course, the islands of California, the Channel Islands of California, where the Tear in the Sky movie was made. That seems to be one of these hotspots, and maybe there is something under the water there where the aliens come in and out.
In certain DoD databases.
Mr. Elizondo, in regards to these aircraft being piloted by whatever they might be, non-human biologics, would you agree that it's likely that they are being piloted by some mind-body connection?
Ma'am, I think it is safe to presume.
Mind-body connection, what does that mean? What does I say here? Yeah, biologics, mind-body connection, speculation. Yeah, I wrote that down at the time.
Here that they are being intelligently controlled because some cases seem to anticipate our maneuvers, and in other cases they seem to. I came across an email where the word "stalked" was used in a.
That's stalked, not stocked. But you know that, for example, the cap points. This was during the exercise during the Nimitz incident. This is these are the locations in the air where the planes meet, and those are only known to people involved in the exercise. Yet the UAPs knew about it. Somehow, it's almost like they could read the minds of Fravor, Dietrich, and the others.
This very secure email between Navy officers discussing their ships being pursued by a UAP.
In our previous panel, we had Grush, and he had testified to say that some of these were interdimensional beings. Can you speak on that at all?
Ma'am, I'm not qualified, certainly as a scientist or otherwise, to speculate points of origin. I look at everything from a scientific perspective. So if you look
interdimensional, this is one of the theories about where they come from. Are they time? I mean, I reject the idea of time travel. Because of the paradoxes, yet they interdimensional. They certainly must use some kind of wormhole technology if they're traveling from long distances, because we're talking about light years otherwise.
For example, instantaneous acceleration, which was one of the observables of the program that I belong to, ATIP, the human body can withstand about 9 G-forces for a short period of time before you suffer negative biological consequences, blackouts and ultimately redouts and even death. Comparison, our best technology, the F-16, which is one of its older platform, but one of our most highly maneuverable aircraft, manned aircraft, made by General Dynamics, can perform about 17 or 18 G-forces before you start having structural failure, meaning that the airframe begins to disintegrate while you're flying. The vehicles we're talking about are performing in excess of 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 Gs.
Bloody hell.
So are you... I guess would it be safe to?
Yeah, they literally go at really, really hypersonic speeds, and they'll stop literally within 10 yards. Yeah, if a person was in there, they would be basically pulverized by those G-forces.
Living craft.
I'm not prepared at this point to state for the record is something alive or not, because even that definition is right. There was a time in science we thought that life required oxygen, and we now know that's not true. There are anaerobic bacteria that thrive in oxygen environments that lack oxygen. And also same with photosynthesis. When I was in college, I was told everything is derived from photosynthesis as a form of energy. In reality, that's not true. There are things that live off of chemosynthesis. So we're constantly having to reevaluate understanding what the definition of life is.
Do any of you ever come across reports from people that claim to have firsthand experiences with these entities, whatever they might be, or these aircraft, and then as a result, whether or not they're religious, find that these things will automatically disappear? Anyone?
I didn't quite. She said religious. I wrote down here religious. I didn't quite understand what she said. I've listened to this phrase a few times, and it's a bit indistinct about what she says. I think what her point is: do people have experiences, like contact experiences, face to face, and then it has effects on their lives? Which is a bit like what the someone was asking earlier on about biological effects and psychological effects.
And this is open to any of you on the panel. So just real quick, because I'm running out of time. Lou?
Ma'am, I've always been a nuts and bolts kind of guy when I was at ATIP. I was focusing more on the performance characteristics and less on the potential occupants.
Okay, the reason I ask is because it seems like just based on our conversations that we've had people that say that there are good and bad of whatever these things are. And so my concern from a national security perspective is A, that true? B, are you guys hearing reports of that?
Oh yeah, I see what you mean. She wants to know what their motivations are. Are they here to help us, to enlighten us? I mean, some of them appear to be, some of them appear to present as very, very benevolent, others less so.
See, I think moving forward in regard to technology, Mr. Gold, if you can answer this real quickly, some of these aircraft, it seems that they are operating off of energy that we don't currently have. But just yes or no, in your opinion, if we were able to obtain that, would that impact humanity for the better or negative?
Would certainly save us some money on funding on Artemis.
Good answer, Goldie. Good answer. Yeah, she's asking basically about free energy. She's saying, basically, are they? I wrote here, energy and propulsion free energy classification. Yeah, that's essentially, in a nutshell, what her question was.
This is a national security issue. That if there is such technology out there, we're not the only country that might have access to it. We don't want to be on the wrong end of technological surprise.
Okay.
You are not the only country by any means. I know at least Russia also has this sort of thing.
Thank you guys for your time.
All right, thank you. I will now recognize Mr. Garcia for 5 minutes.
Thank you, and I apologize for stepping out. My governor is here upstairs, so I'm trying to get in between meetings, so I apologize for that. I wanted to start by just asking everyone on the panel or witnesses, and I had a chance to read all the testimony before, but just to set the agenda, just if we can go down real briefly, do you believe, just for the record, that the federal government, any part of the federal government, is knowingly concealing evidence about UAPs from the public?
Yes, sir.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
They've already answered that question, but I think he just wanted them to say it in words of one syllable. The politicians are like this.
I also want to go down the line. I know many of you have already said this, but just for the record again, just briefly, what do you believe UAPs could be or are?
Strong evidence that they are non-human, higher intelligence.
Good. Well done, Tim. Good answer.
I echo my colleague's comment, sir.
Yeah, well done, Lou.
Genuinely do not know.
Don't know, but we must find out. Okay, thank you. I appreciate those answers, John.
It's interesting they went from the left to the right. They were sort of extreme to less extreme as they went along.
I think this is obviously another remarkable hearing with this really important information, so I thank all of you for answering the questions. Admiral, I just want to go back to one thing. Now, last year, our subcommittee heard from 2 retired Navy pilots, Lieutenant Ryan Graves and Commander David Fravor, regarding UAPs. Actually, I think Ryan is here in the audience and been a great person to get to know and to have conversations with.
I thought I spotted him. I thought there's someone who looks a bit like him. We'll have when we get a wider look at the audience, we'll see if we can see Ryan Graves.
He, of course, has been involved in the Safe Airspace for Americans Act with Chairman Graves, with Chairwoman Mace for UAP reporting by civilian aviation personnel. Can you discuss briefly why it's important for civilian pilots to be able to report UAPs and why these legal protections are critical for our national security?
Yes, Congressman, thank you. And I did invite Ryan Graves as my guest.
I'm not sure I would get on a plane ever again if I didn't, unless there was some way. Now let's have a look at him. Which one's Ryan Graves? Is that him there? He's there somewhere. Is he on the second? No, that's him. Is that him there? The pictures aren't distinct enough. But yeah, he's somewhere in the audience there. There's Leslie Kane there. Oh, that's him. I think there's sitting near Leslie Kane.
I'm on his advisory board for the Americans for Safe Aerospace, and legislation that you supported and introduced, I fully support as well. And I think it's important that more civilian pilots, commercial pilots, report so we can better understand and learn and do research on UAP, as well as remove the stigma, so more citizens report on what they observe. And also, it'll only contribute to aviation safety when we have a better understanding of where these UAP are, how they operate, and at what frequency and what capability level. So it's important for aviation safety, and it'll be important for moving science and research.
Yeah, I mean, if something is up there, it's not on air traffic control, and it comes near aircraft, it's not, we don't know what it is, and it may pose a threat to commercial airliners, with passengers. I mean, indeed, there are cases of passengers, for example, an Aer Lingus jet crossing, it was somewhere, I think, near London. It was hit by some kind of heat ray device from an object that actually scorched the skin of the aircraft. Timothy Good writes about it in one of his books. I mean, if you were in that plane, that'd be a problem. I mean, there's been aerial interceptions in the last couple of years around the UK, which have been very, very interesting because there's been very, very little said about it by the passengers, in other words. But later on, it turns out that, I mean, the idea, apparently planes go off course and they have to be intercepted by the RAF. I think that's an excuse.
research forward.
Thank you, sir. And I just want to reiterate to my colleagues, I mean, this is a very bipartisan piece of legislation, and we just got to continue to get this through the Congress, and it's incredibly important that civilian pilots have the opportunity to safely report the UAPs that they are seeing or encountering in the air. And I can't express how critical this piece of what I believe is a larger collection of evidence and facts actually happened. We've been approached by pilots. I've talked to folks that have been engaged with our office and others, and there is still enormous stigma.
Yeah.
And essentially, we don't have a system where folks are feeling free to be able to report what they're seeing. So
yeah, good. If you remember, for example, the film Close Encounters of the Third Kind, in one of the prologue scenes, I think it's not the opening scene where they find the planes in the desert. It's actually I think the one after that where there's an air traffic control center. And they're picking up strange, and the pilots report strange objects coming in from all sides. And at the end, the air traffic control says, "Do you want to make a UFO report?" And the pilots say one after the other, negative. No, they don't want to talk about it because they don't want their careers affected by it. And yeah, Garcia is absolutely right. That's not a productive way to run society when you want to get to the truth about this. This is how these things do remain covered up. There's not necessarily any need for major suppression. The secrets of UFOs keep themselves because of this stigma. Okay, let's carry on.
I just want to reiterate that advocacy. Mr. Gold, in your testimony, you discussed NASA's Aviation Safety Reporting System, a confidential, non-punitive reporting mechanism. In the Safe Airspace for Americans Act, we explicitly allow for civilian reporting, of course, of UAPs. Can you explain why the NASA task force recommended the use of the Aviation Safety Reporting System?
The Aviation Safety Reporting System is an existing system that is trusted, that has taken hundreds of thousands, now millions of cases. And again, recognizing budgetary constraints, this seemed like the perfect way to be able to gain more data.
Yeah, you simply adapt the existing reporting system to include UFOs.
And when it comes to the stigma, sir, it's something that pilots are used to reporting on, that crew is used to reporting on. So it's a great way to get data to overcome the stigma without spending really that much more additional money since the system exists. Thank you so much for your support of that. Thank you for what Ryan Graves does. This is a common sense means to expose the truth of UAP for the purpose of this hearing.
Thank you. And I just want to also add, now earlier this year, as part of the House Defense Authorization Bill, the NDAA, I filed an amendment to include the UAP Disclosure Act, which would create a UAP records review board. And
yeah, that was really admirable of him. It was a really very, very sterling attempt.
An exercise with exercise of eminent domain over UAP-related material, modeled actually on the JFK Assassination Records Collection Act, which is widely known. Now, the amendment was blocked, but thankfully the Senate included the amendment by Senator Rounds and Schumer for the UAP Disclosure Act. So I just again want to say that we should be pushing.
Yeah, but that was blocked too, wasn't it?
And ensuring the UAP Disclosure Act, which is bipartisan in its support, should move forward. And if I can just briefly, particularly Admiral, can you just briefly, as I close my time, explain why the UAP Disclosure Act would be critical for us and our national security?
Thank you, Congressman. Yes, I believe the UAP Disclosure Act is important for national security, as well as advancing potential socioeconomic benefits resulting from UAP research, as well as public safety, as we referred to previously regarding aviation. And this act will allow for greater transparency and open research, and that's why I'm also a member of the UAP Disclosure Fund as an advisor, as in the Sol Foundation, as an advisor, senior strategic advisor, which is advocating for the same.
Yeah, good on him. Good on him. The Sol Foundation, UFO Disclosure. These are all like, well, Sheehan is in there. You know, this is all something that Danny Sheehan and Steve Bassett are involved in. So he's right up there with those guys, and I appreciate that.
Very much. I yield back.
All right, thank you. I'd like to recognize Mr. Biggs for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for holding this committee. Thank you to the witnesses. Admiral, the video that is called the Go Fast video, the email that you talked about being deleted, I just want to briefly cover this. You said that the email, the author was asking whether any of the recipients were aware of the classified technology demonstrations that could explain the objects that were observed. And then you said the email disappears, and you guys have a series of meetings. The commander of fleet forces and his operations officer never discussed the incident again. Is that right? Is that accurate?
That's accurate, sir.
And even during weekly meetings.
I wonder what would have happened if he'd forwarded the email to a private account. Obviously, you can't do that with classified. You know, it's on an internal intranet, and it's probably be blocked, and he would probably be get into trouble for it if it were possible. But I just wonder what would have happened if he did. Would it have disappeared from that private account too? Supposing he sent it to me on GMX, would that have vanished as well?
It was never discussed again. My question for you is, you were in those meetings. Did you personally hear that nothing was going on about that?
Yes, sir. I was in those meetings. And
did you make inquiries about that?
No, I did not, sir, because I inferred, since I've been read into other special access programs, that this UAP video was part of one that I was not read into, or any of the recipients, or the author of the email, and that an intelligence agency basically pulled it back and instructed the author of the email, hey, this is, you just conducted what they call spillage into a lower classification level. And when that's done, the procedures are basically to remove.
Spillage, that's a good word. I'll have to remember that because it's quite descriptive.
Move any of the communication.
You're going to silo it. So, and you, Mr. Elizondo, you said in your report and your testimony today Government work on the UAP subject still remains classified. Excessive secrecies led to grave misdeeds against loyal civil servants, military personnel, and the public, all to hide the fact that we are not alone in the cosmos. Fair?
Yes, sir.
All right, and all of you, and Mr. Shellenberger, by the way, I've read several of your books, Mr. Shellenberger, excellent stuff. What I would say too is,
all right, so you must be quite open-minded, because Shellenberger is sort of like very anti-establishment.
you were asked about the veracity of the author of this report. You comfortable with veracity?
Yes.
Okay. And then, and I'll get to you in a second, Mr. Gold. We'll talk about Kuhnian and Lakatoshian scientific advancement and how we're obviating that.
So I don't know what he means by that. I didn't at the time.
Through these processes, but we'll get to that in a sec. Because what I want to really get to is the ultimate question. It really becomes this: for what purpose is the federal government overclassifying? Because that's what they're doing. They're overclassifying and forbidding the public from getting access to this. And if you know, if you have an explanation, I'm curious because
Well, you know, this is a good question because it's one the others have asked. It's one that all the, most of these committee members have asked. And you may think, well, why are they asking the same bloody question again? Because these are politicians, and this is the way they do things. It's illegal stuff, and this is why because it's so important.
I know what I've been told. I just want to know from your perspective, why do they overclassify? Mr. Elizondo, you look like your finger on the button, ready to go.
Yes, sir. Forgive me. I think there's several reasons. I think at the time when this reality became evident to the U.S. government, we were in the middle of the Cold War with then Soviet Union, and we did not want to tip our hands to what our knowledge base was.
Steve Bassett says that, and Richard Dolan as well. That this is kind of a relic of the Cold War. I'm not sure I agree. I think it runs deeper than that, but certainly Cold War strategy has helped cover it up.
On this topic, we did not want to broadcast that to
the Cold War is long over.
It is, sir. It is.
Yeah.
There's also then the philosophical argument that the Department of Defense and the intelligence community is solution oriented, and when you don't have answers, it's a really tough spot to be in.
It's easier to be quiet, suppressed than if you don't have the answer.
Yeah, they don't want to admit they can't help and they can't defend and they can't do anything about it.
So in fact, there's a very real example when we built a U-2 spy plane and flew it over then Russia, and we're taking reconnaissance. And when we first started flying the aircraft, it flew so high and so fast we thought they weren't tracking us. In reality, they were tracking every flight. It wasn't until the Russians could develop the SA-2 surface-to-air missile and successfully shoot it down.
I would suggest to you also
the Gary Powers incident. Yeah, that was that's actually mentioned in Annie Jacobson's book about Area 51. Yeah. A U-2 pilot was shot down. He was actually exchanged in a prisoner swap a few years later. There's a good film called Bridge of Spies with Tom Hanks, which talks about that.
Also, along with Lakatos and Kuhn, you also have a problem with Kenneth Arrow's path dependence and increasing returns. That's one reason why they won't disclose it. It's too painful to admit. But I just want to read a couple things from Mr. Shellenberger.
I don't know exactly what he was talking about in terms of terminology and the details. I think he's referring to some kind of political strategy or statistics or something. But he's basically saying, well, they kind of dug themselves a hole they can't get out of. It's not just the nature of what's being kept secret. It's the fact the secret exists at all is what they can't now go back on to admit, well, we kept this secret for so long and you've been laughing at the people who said called us out. Sorry, we'll bring back school milk and things like that. It's not very realistic. And that is a major part of, I think that is a major reason that there is this secrecy endures.
What he gave to us today, because I think this is interesting stuff, and I just want to convey this to you. On USG networks, there exists infrared footage of and imagery of a grouping of vessels engaged in SIGINT and mass collection at night in a specific area of the Pacific Ocean. This footage, which was in close proximity to the
signal intelligence, SIGINT is signal intelligence, USG, US government, just to let you know.
Vessels, a large equilateral triangle UAP suddenly appears directly over the ships. These three bright points are seen at each bottom corner of the UAP, which is observed to slowly rotate on its horizontal.
Is this the US kid incident?
Access, and he goes on to describe that. And I just want to read one more, and I'm doing this because I think it's interesting. This stuff is interesting as anything. So let's get this one here, right here. While performing a routine airspace surveillance and control mission in the Eastern Air Defense Sector, an F-22 fighter observed multiple UAP contacts at mission altitude. Moving to intercept, the F-22 pilot noted multiple metallic orbs slightly smaller than a sedan, hovering in place. Upon vectoring towards the UAPs, a smaller formation of the metallic orbs accelerated at rapid speed towards the F-22, which was unable to establish radar locks on the presumed hostile UAPs. The F-22 broke trajectory and attempted to evade, but was intercepted and boxed in by approximately 3 to 6 UAPs. And then I'll leave that there because I just have no more time left.
Yeah.
Well, she's not looking. So let's just get into let's get into part of this.
I thought I would be saved by the bell.
No. Let's talk about Kuhnian, Lakatoshian type of scientific development. And the problem that we have here is you have institutional blockage of what would be normal development of scientific ideas.
Yeah.
And if you want to expand that, Mr. Gold.
We're over time, so be very fast, please.
I'll just say I'm a recovering attorney, so please take it easy on the science. But all breakthroughs have been heretical at first, and that's the challenge that we face, particularly with something as extraordinary as this, which is why gathering the data is so important. And I'll just end by saying, by the way, the overclassification of material is in no way limited to UAP. That is occurring throughout the government, as well as the inability ability to get people classifications in a timely and efficient manner. And
Yeah, I mean, it's human-built things such as what Ashton Forbes talks about. You know, the esoteric technology. Indeed, even Simon Parks is not Simon Parks. Simon Holland. I mustn't get those two mixed up. Simon Holland is now I'm actually going to do a follow-up thing about Simon Holland and the quantum tunneling and things like that.
then to have those classifications be broad enough to be useful. So this is a larger issue that I hope the Congress will.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Biggs. I've been generous. All right, Mr. Burleson, I'll recognize you for 5 minutes of questions, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Elizondo, does any branch of the United States government or defense contractors possess technology?
So there's documentation that I believe was submitted for the record that was released, as proof released by the U.S. Pentagon, by the Department of Defense Office of Pre-Publication Security Review, and it states one of the reasons why my predecessor program, OSAP, was trying to collect material of unknown origin.
Was it successfully collected?
It was not. What happened is that there was an aerospace contract company that requested to divest itself of the material that was collected in the 1950s. Unfortunately, that didn't actually.
An aerospace company. I wonder which one.
Sure.
So let's dive into that.
Doesn't he look like Richard Doty?
Yeah, Bigelow Aerospace, correct?
My goodness me, has anyone seen him and Richard Doty in the same room together? I think I have a new conspiracy theory.
So there was a journalist, Christopher Sharp, who said that there was a transfer between Lockheed Martin, Bigelow Aerospace, and the CIA allegedly blocked this. Can you describe that?
What I can say is that it was blocked. Why it was blocked, I can only surmise.
Probably because Bigelow wouldn't go along with the secrecy. That's my view.
I was part of some conversations later on with some of those contract personnel where they had told all of us that is accurate.
Yeah. I mean, Bigelow was involved in the ATIP materials, ATIP's material analysis project. He was actually contracted to that. But there's a limit to how far you can push Bigelow, because I think Bigelow's an honest guy.
And what we required was a memo from the Secretary of the Air Force in order to make that complete, and that never occurred. And so when Secretary Mattis became Secretary of Defense, I decided it would be appropriate for me to try to receive a memo from him as SecDef, as Secretary of Defense, if we could not get a memo from the Secretary of the Air Force to transfer that material.
He was Trumpian. Mattis was the Trumpian Secretary of Defense. Maybe he'll come back.
So if that material exists today, who's in possession?
Sorry, I wouldn't be able to have that conversation in an open hearing. We probably have to have that.
Okay. Oh, it is the aerospace company you won't name that mentioned it, Lou, isn't it?
My question to you then is, if we were in a secure setting, if we were in a skiff, would you be able to provide or get access to something, whether it's visuals or material that we could put our hands on, or biologics, that would convince me, that would show me that we have non-human origins?
So
that's a fair enough comment. I'm guessing that he hasn't been with Moskowitz and Luna and the others in the skiff already.
Decision would not be mine. That would be to the gatekeeper still in the U.S. government.
And who would we?
Gatekeeper. Good. Well done for using that word, Lou.
So if you were in our shoes, where would you go from here? How would you get that information? A lot of times we just don't know who to ask because we don't know where to go next. So if you were in our shoes, where would you go?
Well, I prefer to answer that question in a closed session. However, we established Aero for that very purpose, and unfortunately, under its previous leadership, it failed.
Well, that wasn't its purpose, though. I mean, it was. I'm sure you had good intentions, Lou, but its purpose was as a cover. It was just to assist the cover-up in the end. I mean, Kirkpatrick was simply one of the gatekeepers.
So one would hope that they would have the authorities necessary to do that. Let's hope that this new iteration of leadership will be successful.
In the discussions, it's simply about material, or is there a discussion about biologics? It was previously testified that there's biologics that were collected. Are you aware of any of that?
I am, sir, aware of the biologics have been recovered. Again, my focus was more nuts and bolts, looking at the physical aspects of these phenomena, how they interacted around military equities and nuclear equities. So I'm certainly not a medical expert. I would not be able to probably provide you a whole lot of value in that simply because I don't have the expertise.
Was anything described as that we have possession of bodies?
Yes.
Is it multiple types of creatures, or?
Sir, I couldn't answer that. I can tell you anecdotally that it was discussed quite a bit when I was at the Pentagon. The problem is the supposed collection of these biological samples occurred before my time, in fact, before I was even born.
And was this part of the Lockheed Martin discussion, or was this the biologics is a completely separate?
Separate yet related.
Is he? I mean, I think Lou was born sort of late 60s. So what's he talking about here? Roswell and Kingman? Which incident in particular? Or maybe it's one we don't know of.
Has anyone made contact?
Sir, I'm sorry, could you specify?
Has there been any, to your knowledge, any communication with a non-human life form?
So the term communication is a bit of a trick word because there's verbal communication like we're having now. The problem is you also have nonverbal communication. And so I would say definitively yes, but from a nonverbal.
Mind-to-mind communication. Very often people report that the aliens don't speak, but they speak you can hear voices in your head.
meaning when a Russian reconnaissance aircraft comes into U.S. airspace, we scramble two F-22s, and we are certainly communicating intent and capability. I think the same goes with this. We have these things that are being observed over controlled U.S. airspace, and they're not really doing a good job hiding themselves. They're making it pretty obvious they have the ability to
they are communicating. They are communicating with us in a way. Sometimes they fly in formations specifically around, for example, the space shuttle, or a warship, or a city.
Fear with our nuclear equities.
Yeah,
and our
that
nuclear
is a form of communication.
readiness.
Is the United States government or and our contractors, are they pulling technology from this? Or they're reverse engineering this?
Sir, as I previously stated, please forgive me, I am not authorized to discuss specifics about crash retrievals. I signed documentation with the U.S. government. What I can say was, after a very thorough review process by the Pentagon, what I wrote about, and that was my limit, unfortunately, that I was given.
I think Elizondo's had conversations like this many times in a private setting, so he knows exactly what to say at a certain time.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I would like to recognize Mr. Timmons for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Elizondo, you just said something interesting. You said they don't seem to be hiding. They don't seem to be hiding. The UAP sightings are becoming increasingly brash, if you will. And, we've been
Grow some hair, you bald bastard.
hearing about these for years, but they've generally been isolated and not as consistent and over critical military installations. Would you say that's fair? Is this becoming increasingly often? Is it happening more and more?
Great question, sir. Let me see if I can answer this for you. Certainly, there seems to be some indication that they're being provocative, meaning that they're, in some cases, literally splitting aircraft formations right down the middle. So that's an air safety issue. The question is it the frequency increasing? And the response is, it depends.
There have been instances, by the way, of actual attacks on aircraft. Not American incidents so much. There's many from Russia, but it does happen.
Yes, it's possible that there is an increase in frequency, but it's also possible that there's heightened awareness now, and there's also more pervasiveness of technology out there that's collecting this information and that can record this information. So we're not quite sure yet if it's actually an increase in numbers of these events, or is it that we have better equipment now that to record these things, and we have a better ability, if you will, to analyze these things.
And that's my next question. It seems that a lot of these sightings occur near military installations. Do you think that these UAPs are intentionally targeting military installations, or do you think that we have increased abilities to monitor surrounding military installations?
Sir, maybe both. Part of my concern is we have something in the Department of Defense and the intelligence community called IPB, Initial Preparations of the Battle Space. And we use equities like ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and other type of equities and technologies to prep the battle space. And certainly, if I was wearing my national security hat, even if there was a 2% chance that there was some sort of hostile intent here, that's 2% higher than we really can accept. And so we must figure out, there's a calculus, capabilities versus intent, in order to identify something as a national security threat. We've seen some of the capabilities, yet we have no idea the intent. And so this is why this discussion is somewhat, I think, problematic from a governmental perspective, because we have no idea.
Sure, thank you. Mr. Shellenberger, you're particularly familiar with the Langley Air Force Base incident a year ago? Are you familiar?
Just from what I read.
Just from what you've read?
Yeah, that's very recent. That was only like last year, I think.
I would imagine a large percentage of the American population became aware of that with the Wall Street Journal article. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
And were you aware of that incident prior to the Wall Street Journal article?
No.
To the rest of the panel, was the Wall Street Journal article the first time that y'all were made aware?
I didn't know that. That's interesting. So Shellenberger is a bit of a newcomer to this particular subject. I wonder what his sort of left-wing environmentalist peers thought of him taking this tack.
Of what was essentially an over 2-week UAP frenzy over Langley Air Force Base. Were y'all aware of this prior to the Wall Street Journal article? Anybody? Show of hands. Yes, sir. Dr. Gallaudet, could you give me how did you become aware of it?
A colleague of mine who I referenced previously, Chris Mellon, he wrote an extensive article about this, that there were other incursions of drones over Langley before this, as well as many, many military installations over the last 5 decades.
And they are calling them drones, the Langley thing.
It's my understanding there's been an ever-increasing in number, and I'm trying to think how to say this because I wear 2 different hats. I'm still in the Air Force. So I mean, it seems that they're becoming increasingly brash, and the question that we really have to figure out is it China or is it non-human? And I think that's the biggest question the American people want to know. It's China.
Yeah, see if China or Russia gets blamed for these things.
It's scary because they have a lot of technology that we cannot explain. And if it's non-human, that's scary because we don't know the intent. Would you say that's fair?
Yes, Congressman. In fact, I really believe that we should use this hearing as a catalyst to improve and bolster our air defense capabilities and our maritime domain awareness capabilities, because obviously there are holes in it, whether it be UAP of non-HI direction or NHI direction, or as you say, sir, China or any other adversary.
I don't think it's China. If it was China, there wouldn't be this fuss about Taiwan or anything like that, because China would, any war that happened, even involving nuclear missiles, China would easily win.
Are you all aware of any task force at the Pentagon or in the national security apparatus that's trying to assess the answer to that question?
At the current moment, sir, no, but this is a great point. From 2020 to 2022, there was a UAP task force in the DoD succeeding where Mr. Elizondo worked, led by Jay Stratton, who had the first comprehensive whole-of-government approach to UAP, which involved pathways to declassification and to increase...
Oh, yeah. The old UAPTF.
Transparency, as well as assessing the national security risks of UAP. This was a really well-established approach, and we have all advocated that something like it return.
I'm running out of time. The last thing is that we need authorities. The law enforcement, military do not have authorities to actually engage, and Congress needs to act to give those authorities to local law enforcement and the military so they have clear guidelines on how to assess these issues going forward. I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to recognize Ms. Boebert for 5 minutes of question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now that we have all been cautioned in this committee hearing that the mention of Pentagon's Immaculate Constellation program could put us on a list, well, I already find myself on many lists, I'm sure. So I speak my mind often, so why not just keep going with it? May as well just go all out and say it. The Earth is flat, birds are government drones, and we've never set foot on the moon. And
is she mocking, or is she sort of like being a hyperbolic and saying she's sort of on our side?
Joe Biden received 81 million votes in the 2020 election. So let's just...
Oh, nice one. Nice one. Now that she just said something that is considered misinformation, banned on Facebook.
See how many lists we could get on here today. But Mr. Shellenberger, I wanted to ask you, I think I understand from this hearing that you would agree that classifying information like this is not in the best interest of the people. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, with the caveat that, of course, I would support classification necessary to protect secrets essential to national security, but I think it's pretty obvious that there's overclassification.
Overclassification, yes. And so in most instances, if they can't tell us what, do you think at some point they'll at least tell us why?
President-elect...
how do they tell them, how do they say why without saying what? Because if they say why, then people can say, well, you've explained why you've covered this up, but... how can you? Did she? How you've explained why you're covering this up? What are you covering up? Well, if it's the other way around, we'll tell you what it is, but not tell you why. And people say, "Well, hang on a minute, you knew about this 100 years ago and didn't tell us. Why not?"
Like Trump has.
So yeah, the two questions inevitably go together. Now, what is President-elect Trump going to do?
Repeatedly committed to greater transparency, both on the UAP issue, on JFK files, on COVID origins, and many of the
I believe him.
Things. So I think that we need to make sure that the next administration is held accountable for that.
Agreed. And this is for all four of you. Yes or no, please. I have many questions I want to get to. Are there any known instances of recovered materials or technologies that are not of human origin and may be connected to any advanced bioscience defense programs within the USG?
I don't know.
I wouldn't. She said bioscience defense program within the U.S. government. Is she talking about like that kind of that horrible story that Annie Jacobson told about Area 51, about how these were basically surgically altered children rather than aliens that they fired in rockets at Roswell? I mean, I don't think that's true, and I thank God it's not true because it's a horrific story. As she said, is that what she's referring to when it comes to the U.S. government?
I don't know.
Okay, so there are rumors that have come up to the Hill of a secretive project within the Department of Defense involving the manipulation of human genetics with what
her questions are the best of all.
Is described as non-human genetic material, potentially for the enhancement of human capabilities, hybrids. Are any of you familiar with that? Yes or no?
She's talking about super soldiers now. She's talking about alien-human hybrid super soldiers. Miles Johnston, for goodness sake, invite this woman to speak at the Basis Project conference.
No, ma'am.
I am not, ma'am.
I'm not.
No, ma'am.
Okay, I would like to know, with Immaculate Constellation, how does this relate to UAP activities, Mr. Schellenberg, in oceanic environments? Are there any instances where the Navy or other maritime forces have encountered UAPs that could not be explained by known technology or natural phenomena?
Yeah, the Immaculate Constellation covers both terrestrial and oceanic, and there's actually a number of cases described in the report that occur in the ocean.
And do you believe that there is a concerted effort by the Pentagon to keep Congress out of the loop regarding these UAP activities, specifically in our waters?
Yes.
I think it's about 5% of our ocean that's actually been studied in detail by man, and we've studied more of space than we had of our own oceans. And so are there any accounts of UAPs emerging from...
We know more about some of the planets in our solar system than we do about the depths of our own oceans.
Or submerging into our water, which could indicate a base or presence beneath the ocean's surface.
I don't know about...
She's been watching Danny Sheehan.
A base, but as I mentioned, I had a different source entirely described this pretty extraordinary footage that exists of orbs, of an orb coming out of the ocean and being met by another orb.
Yeah, there's several pieces of footage of that. The Omaha incident is one. There's several others, including the Tear in the Sky movie. If you had the technology to do so, the depths of the ocean or the far side of the moon would be the perfect place to put to hide, because you'd have something basically where it's close to the Earth. It's in terms of the far side of the moon, it's one of the few places in the universe that is completely invisible from the Earth's surface for a reason other than sheer distance. and it's right next door in cosmic terms. The oceans, again, if you could find a way to get under the oceans, you'd be completely out of sight. If you had the technology to do so, you'd be completely out of sight of anyone in the world, and yet you'd be able to operate completely freely in the Earth's atmosphere just by coming in and out of the water. This lady is well switched on.
Some would say that there's multiple hotspots where we see frequent activity. So in your investigations, have you come across any data or visual evidence like sonar readings or underwater footage of these UAPs?
I have not beyond what's in the report.
You've written about
Underwater footage is a bit tricky. I mean, you have sonar. It's any data gathered from underwater is usually acoustic. You can't actually see through water to any great extent.
UAPs not only in the air but in underwater. Are there any specifics on what you've learned about the UAP activity in our oceans? Particularly, have you spoken with sources who have provided any evidence or eyewitness accounts of these UAPs interacting with our naval forces or being detected by our underwater surveillance systems?
Nothing beyond what's in the report and then the specific case that I mentioned with the orb.
And so this report says it all. There's no other information that we are aware of regarding the activity within our waters.
I have other sources that have told me that have shared a significant amount of information, but they're not comfortable with me sharing it at this point.
Okay. Are there any technological capabilities observed in these oceanic UAPs that seem to defy our current understanding of physics or our engineering capabilities?
Yeah, 5 observables.
Yes, I would agree with that. My time is up, but I do appreciate your bravery, your courage for coming here and speaking today. And it seems like there's still some questions that we need answers to, and we will not relent until we get those to the American people.
Well done, lady.
Thank you. I move to allow myself and the ranking member 5 additional minutes for questions without objection, so ordered. Mr. Elizondo, were you read into the Immaculate Constellation program?
I would not be authorized to confirm nor deny the existence of any ongoing or past program, especially as it relates to a special access program, either by name or trigraph.
Okay. And then does the U.S. government or
maybe privately he's told Shellenberger that he was.
Private contractors, they work with other foreign countries, China, for example, to exchange data, quote from a source, that intelligence data about UAP.
What are you Miss Mace, are you accusing Lockheed Martin of espionage here? What does she mean exactly?
Let me see if I can answer that a little bit more generally, ma'am, if I may. We do have foreign material exploitation programs. That is something that is widely known, and that term itself is unclassified. How exactly that works becomes a bit sensitive.
Well, Area 51, I mean, Annie Jacobson reports at Area 51, they had like Soviet aircraft and things like that. A contact in Israel actually provided them with a MiG-21 fighter, which is like the latest Soviet aircraft back in the 60s. But I don't know but does it get more exotic than that?
Discussion we could certainly have in a closed session if you like. We do work with international partners and allies quite often, not just in military exercises and workups, but in other intelligence efforts as well.
In terms of material that's given to private contractors, is certain material given to certain contractors because of their experience? So, for example, if it's related to submerged and undersea propulsion, would it go to a general contractor like General Dynamics?
Yes, ma'am, absolutely correct. Different contractors have different levels of expertise.
What's Lockheed's expertise?
Aerospace, ma'am.
In the UAP space, that's all that they wouldn't do submerged.
No, I didn't say that, ma'am.
Okay.
Lockheed Martin and others do quite a bit of work, both in our atmosphere, in space, and even underwater. There are certain efforts to. It's a tough question you're asking. Put me on the spot here.
I'm looking for the answer.
Yes, ma'am. No, they are involved in a lot. I would rather let Lockheed Martin explain the different domains that they are involved with. I'm not authorized to discuss that, but they are involved in a lot of different areas and domains.
Admiral, flight safety risks for our pilots, based on what you've experienced and seen in your career.
They're extensive. And one exercise I referred to where I received the email that was then deleted was the pilots. And this is worth bringing out. There are debunkers out there who have said the GoFast video was just a balloon. That was only one video that was released. There were dozens of these encounters that pilots and friends of Ryan Graves, who's in this room right here.
Yeah, suck it up, Mick West.
Witnessed and caused significant safety concerns. And to almost call out an exercise and shut it down, which is very compressed, and the carrier's getting ready for deployment, the pilots have to get certified to land on the carrier. It's extreme, to say the least.
All right, I have 2 last questions. Real quickly, Mr. Shellenberger, how do we get more whistleblowers to come forward?
Well, this hearing is very important. And obviously, I can't encourage whistleblowers to obtain information, but I can guarantee that I will protect them and go to prison to protect their identities. If they come to me.
Yes, sir. Okay,
I hope that won't be necessary. I wouldn't want him to become the new Julian Assange.
Last question. The first hearing we had on this, I'd never been briefed on UAPs or what they were, biologics, non-human, et cetera. How would you define, each of you, my last question, how would you define non-human biologics, non-human intelligence? What are we actually talking about? Admiral, and we'll go down the line.
I don't think it's a stretch when you look at the diversity of life on this planet and the size of this universe to think that there will be more diverse, higher order, non-human intelligences throughout the universe. And that's probably what's visiting us.
I would take the scientific approach. The definition would be the ability to react to a stimulus in a manner that requires an intellectual thought process.
I just don't know.
I think we must be modest in our assumptions that we're looking for intelligence. That could be biological. It might not.
Non-biological, but what non-biological intelligence?
Like AI sort of thing.
What does that mean, though?
Artificial intelligence, ML, machines. We assume that all intelligence would be like us. And every time we look out in the universe, we are humbled relative to what we don't know in terms of the forms of intelligence and what it may take. I can assure you, I probably...
Thing is, though, the answer is if, for example, we come across intelligent machines that are more sophisticated versions of our own AI, the question then was, the question I'd like to ask them was, who built you? Who created you then? And so all these other machines created us. Well, at some point, now, if you're dealing with artificial platforms for intelligence and consciousness, they are, the very fact they're artificial means there must be something non-artificial at the bottom of this kind of infinite regress. Otherwise, it's just AIs all the way down, or some super levitating mega AI, which is not, both of which are impossible.
I can't ask you your question, but I think the ultimate answer is going to surprise us all.
And then, Mr. Garcia, do you have a few closing remarks?
And I know we're about to hit votes here, so I'll be brief. Just, I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank Chairwoman Mace especially for holding this important bipartisan hearing. And I want to thank all the committee members that are interested in this topic. I think our commitment to all of you and all the folks who have contacted us, and certainly to the advocates and the pilots, is that we need to continue investigating UAPs. I think the country owes, the country's owed explanations and ensure that the safety of national security is always protected. This is a conversation and questioning that must continue, so I'm very grateful to all of you. And I also just want to add, just personally, I think it's really important for me, two things guide my questioning and my observations on UAPs. One is we should always be guided by facts, science, and data, and stay serious on those issues. And the second thing is I think that we should not limit our imagination and our thoughts and our curiosity on what UAPs could actually be. And I think those two things for me are really important, and I'm grateful for all of you to be here. So with that, I yield back.
Okay, and we have Mr. Ogles, who is on the way. He's going to be here any second. Is that correct? Check, and he'll be the last member with questions that we have today, and then we have votes. So we want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank Mr. Garcia and folks on both sides of the aisle for being here today and being patient. We have a lot more questions, and I hope that this will open the door to more hearings in the future. I obviously would like to know how much taxpayers are spending on this. You have the right to know, but also if we're spending money on something that doesn't exist, why are we spending the money? And if it doesn't, if it does exist, why are we hiding it from the public? And of course, our national security is a huge issue, because if there's technology that could harm us or our allies that are in the hands of our adversaries, we obviously want to stay ahead of that to the best of our ability to ensure that that technology is not in the hands of someone who could use it against us or our allies anywhere in the world. So, Mr. Ogles, you're just in time, babe. I will recognize you for 5 minutes of questioning before we head on out today.
Well, he just burst out of some strategic arms limitation talk that couldn't go ahead without him.
Well, thank you all for being here. And Madam Chairwoman, I'm out of breath because I sprinted to get here. But this is an important hearing. I think we all know that there's something going on. Mr. Elizondo, based on your knowledge of UAP sightings, do you believe it's fair to say that they're especially common near nuclear sites?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Mr. Congressman, I absolutely am convinced of that, as are my colleagues inside the government.
That's why he missed the earlier part of the meeting. That's why he asked that question, because, of course, that's come up several times.
And the reason why I pose that question, and this has been one of my talking points from the beginning, is, Oak Ridge is in Tennessee. The so-called weather balloon that drifted, that we now know was controlled, it passed near Oak Ridge. It obviously is a sensitive site, both of interest to our adversaries and to whatever
That's
else
that Chinese thing. Do you remember I did about 4 videos about that? Well, the first one was Chinese. The others are just called objects. Do you remember that? Object Gate. I've got an entire portal here, actually, to show you. Pardon me. There we go. Look, I've done an entire portal if you want to know more. And here it is, Object Gate mini portal. There's all these different... there's this whole list of productions I've done on that matter. Some written, some video, some audio. Okay.
This is because we know that at military installations, at sensitive locations such as nuclear facilities, that we're seeing this take place. So the question is what is it? Do you believe they've caused an irregular activity, and why might they be interested in those sites?
Sir, in some cases, it's actually regular activity. You'd be surprised. There's actually documentation right now that's been submitted. It's not just Oak Ridge. It's Savannah River Site, SRS. It's also Los Alamos. A lot of our sensitive R&D locations appear to be under some sort of surveillance and monitoring. Why? Well, because a lot of innovation comes out of those areas. A lot of new technologies, a lot of, if you will, disruptive technologies that we use for our national defense originates out of those locations, and advanced concepts in physics as well. So if I was doing any type of reconnaissance, even on a foreign adversary, that's a great target to start with.
Sure, and again, this has been one of my talking points. I do have questions. What role might the Department of Energy or its subsidiaries or affiliates have in this type of technology, or possessing this type of technology, whether it's ours or others? Mr. Gallaudet, I think your testimony has been pretty clear, but would you please reiterate that do you believe UAPs pose a threat to pilots? Excuse me.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. They were threatening Navy pilots during the exercise that I was, my people were involved with in 2015, and it's my understanding they're risking pilot safety, commercial and military today.
Well, considering, and I understand that there's a need
in some cases, to keep certain technologies secret. But you believe that it is posing a threat to our personnel, correct?
Yes, sir.
So I think it's reasonable to conclude that if there's a threat to our personnel who are serving our country faithfully, that there be oversight.
100%, Congressman. And in fact, that's the one thing that we've not talked about enough during this hearing, is the fact that the government executive branch not sharing with Congress what it knows about UAP infringes on your legislative and oversight responsibilities to such an extent that's very concerning.
Yeah, well, I think that's going to change now we got Trump. I'm optimistic in that sense. You're going to find him very, very different. You're going to find it very different working with Trump than you were with Biden and the people controlling him.
I mean, what else are we, if you look at national security or intelligence or foreign affairs or appropriations, you all have oversight and legislative responsibility regarding those. This UAP issue may be the greatest issue of our time, and it's being hid from you.
Well, I mean, and to your point, I think we've seen over the decades that we have certain adversaries like China, like Russia, that technologically speaking are not as advanced as us, that they lack some of the lethality that we have, and that we've seen that they've gone after our technologies and in some cases succeeded, in particular with missile technology. And so again, my concern, whether this technology emanates from us or otherworldly, that we know that we possess it.
Yeah.
And where's the accountability? Where are the
point? What if spies got hold of this secret UAP tech? Now, we know from history that with the development of nuclear weapons, for example, spies did get hold of it. I mean, a lot of the developments made by the Soviet Union, for example, and her allies in the Cold War were taken by spies. I mean, I've done an entire video called Spies of London, which was meant to be the first part of a series. It never came about, but it talks about the various people like George Blake and Kim Philby, and the Cambridge spies. And there was the nuclear spies. There was the Rosenbergs. There was Klaus Fuchs, and a couple of others. They had spies everywhere. Presumably, as early as the late 1940s, they would have known something about ET technology as well. And not only that, let's not forget, I mean, he did say that the Americans are ahead in terms of like the lethality of technology. But how are they really? Because these things crash in China as well. They crash in Russia. I've done an entire video about an incident in Russia, which appears to be some kind of UFO crash retrieval in the 60s. So yeah, but that's a good point. I mean, how secure is this? Not just from the people of the nation, but from foreign adversaries. I mean, you could argue, well, it's pretty irrelevant when people don't know about it. But from their perspective, I understand his concern.
What are the guarantees that if this were to fall in enemy hands, that it isn't immediately weaponized against us?
No.
And I'll say this: it is clear from my experience and what I've seen.
No guarantees.
That there is something out there.
Yeah.
The question is it ours? Is it someone else's? Or is it otherworldly? And Madam Chairman, I would posit that as the legislative body, as the regulatory body, we must know.
Yeah.
And anyone who prevents us from gaining access to that information, I would consider that criminality. Because we have U.S. personnel who may very well be in harm's way.
Yeah.
We have technology that ultimately may threaten our very existence.
Yeah.
With that, Madam Chairman,
you're not supposed to applaud in these events, but they do. The audience in the public gallery did.
For your indulgence, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Ogles. And with that and without objection, all members will have 5 legislative days within which to submit materials and to submit additional written questions for the witnesses, which will be forwarded to the witnesses for their response. If there's no further business without objection, the subcommittee stands adjourned.
Hey. Yes. I like it. That was good.
Well done, sir. Thank you.
Wow, that was quite something, wasn't it? That was quite something. That was interesting. Now, I don't want this video to be too long, but there's lots more I could show you. I could show you some news spots which have been done about this. I've been watching some news reports. I've been watching some of the commentary by other ufologists. There's a whole list. There's a whole array of them. Vetted, Timothy Alberino, Christina Gomez. They're all doing their own version of what I'm doing now. And I won't show you those. But what I'll do is I'll just take you through some of the things I got from Twitter, because they're interesting, but also amusing. Very amusing indeed. So I've already showed you the disclosure memes here. This is an AI picture of, I don't know what's going on there. That's about, but I do recommend. This is a really, really good. This is a really, really good Twitter feed here. But look, I've already showed you that one. Here we are. Lou Elizondo. I got word that Imminent is on Amazon's best. What's it? BOT best books of the year list. Hey, in the science department. Oh my God, they won't like that, will they? These are the skeptics have been trying to get, Flint Dibble. Do you remember my QED video? Flint Dibble has been trying to get Flint Dibble. Has been trying to get Ancient Apocalypse reclassified as science fiction. Good luck with that, mate. Good luck with that. Oh, here we go. Tim Burchett, we've already seen this. We're talking about technologies that can outperform anything in our inventory. Yeah. And I showed you that one as well, which is very funny. And this is just another clip here. Extraterrestrial life UAPs confirmed. Yeah, it is. They essentially said that. Yes, he says several people have confirmed. And this is Nancy Mace herself, who says here, read the Immaculate Constellation document for yourself. So she's actually retweeted. She's retweeted that very document here, written by Michael Shellenberger. And here we are. Oh, we have here. There's Corbell. Oh,
this is the calm before.
There's Corbell, James Fox. Oh, wicked! I wish I was there. There's Fox there, and there's a couple of other people. Oh, I wish I was there, man. I wish I was in there. That'd be so cool. I must go to one of these. I must go over there one. All right, now this is Stephen Greenstreet. Now I retweeted this. By retweeting Greenstreet, I don't mean that I'm pleased with what he says here, because I think he was very unfair, and he had a lot of ridicule. But this was a UFO believers holding. This is a picture. He says it will hold a rally in Washington D.C. following the UFO hearing in Congress on November the 13th. And indeed they did. I told you about it. The one organized by MUFON. This is a video he made previously of one from last year.
Defense Authorization Act. It was 60.
Humanity
Good for
is
them.
entering its ET will. We
They're basically
come
protesting.
right before the office of Senator Schumer.
You remember I did one of these once, didn't I? I did one. It was outside the Science Museum on Disclosure Day one year. Miles filmed it. I remember.
To express our appreciation for his leadership.
In 2020, to acquire potential aliens emphatically states that there is no evidence of aliens.
Greenstreet is a skeptic. He's a big skeptic. There's that tweet I just explained how I couldn't do. I mean, how could I have done this video? I mean, how long is it now? How could I possibly have done this video on Wednesday evening? And there it is. Look, and this is Fox as well. This is him. This is him walking down the corridor in the office building. Little James Fox. I can't wait to see his new movie when it comes out.
Good morning.
Program. I can't wait to see the program.
Hey, James.
Oh, you'll see Melinda Leslie in a minute.
Hey, guys. I'm just going to meet somebody.
There's people. They've got chairs there because the queue's so long. Most of these people wouldn't get in there.
But in that door. Hey, how's it going?
I'm on the podcast, man. We've been talking for too long.
Wow, look at that. I mean, I do hope they set up like a side room with a TV screen and like so people could watch it from another room. Those people wouldn't fit in that room, obviously.
Hey, hi. Hey, what's up?
There's Melinda. See, there's Melinda. I met her. She was at Contact in the Desert.
Hey, guys.
Did you see? I gotta show you something real quick.
Hold on, I gotta keep filming because I'm doing something here. Hold on.
I got the camera too. I
Oh,
got the camera, so I can get you on the camera.
Okay, I'm following you, brother.
There's someone else filming there. There's loads of them. Oh, wicked, man. Wouldn't it be great to be there, right?
I'm filming. I know the tricks. I know the tricks. You know what time it is. Okay. Hey, this is the magician of the year.
Oh, wicked. I mean, it would have been great to be there, wouldn't it? It would have been absolutely fantastic to be there. Right. So now I'll go to John. I'll just show you what John posted because there was some very interesting comments underneath what he posted. It's not he himself. I quite like this guy, but he does have some real idiots following him sometimes. Where are we now? He posted just a simple question. UAP hearing adjourned. What do you think? Oh, look, I actually wrote dynamite. Look, see, I wrote dynamite, but everyone else was saying this. Gold. Someone's taking the piss. I can only give my opinion about the hearing in a closed session. They're taking the mickey. This is all very cynical. I'm disappointed. Where are the real pilots and whistleblowers? Nothing burger. Why didn't Lou mention he was director of that program when he was under oath? Well, he mentioned he was involved. He didn't say the word director, but he said he was involved. Here we go. Disappointing. Nothing new. Mostly a nothing burger. Yeah, you see, glad I forgot to buckle up. Again, these people want miracles. It's a joke. A Sergeant Grumpy. God, he doesn't have to live up to his name. A whole load about nothing. These people, I think, are overly cynical. They really are, and I'll say more about that in a minute. But I just want to go to my likes. I'm not gonna. I'll go to my likes. I liked a few ones as well. Of course, I'll just show you them now. Likes are private on. Likes are private, so I'll just show you them on my likes. I don't think I've got nothing embarrassing in my likes, have I? If there's anything embarrassing there, I'll just edit it out. But I'm not ashamed of anything I like. Here we go. Look, a point of contact. Although this is Bryce Zabel. Although the UAP hearing testimony was uneven, Gallaudet and Elizondo were the standouts. The statements were amazing and challenging and deserved to be heard. Unfortunately, overall, it feels like no one's paying attention yet. Oh, well, I don't know. That's the thing I retweeted. Ashton Forbes. That's another. Yeah, some of these likes are irrelevant, and I retweeted that one and then that one. Kelly Chase, the world is getting weird at a breathtaking pace. Yeah, I met Kelly at Contact. Yeah, post-disclosure world, Ryan. Let it rip. What does Lou say here?
For a lot of us. And hi, everybody. Lou here in Washington, D.C. the night before our testimony.
You can see the Capitol behind him there.
I just want to say it's been a long journey for a lot of us. And tomorrow is a culmination of many years and a lot of sacrifice by a lot of people. And I just wanted to say to all of you, thank you very much. And let's let her rip.
Yeah, let her rip.
Take care and God bless.
Nice one, Lou. There we now. Again, this is another clip. Now it's, and Mick West says, now it's underwater alien bases. And now I know he's being sarcastic, but I still liked it. Giorgio Sokolas. Giorgio Six says, I'm not saying I told you so, but I told you so. I should have retweeted that. I'm going to retweet it. There we go. Steve Bassett. It's worth noting Roswell is never mentioned. That's true, Steve. Yeah. And here's Nancy Mace. As I said, I retweeted that. And I've retweeted that. John Stewart, next congressional hearing. If they want truth. Oh, this is the guy I interviewed on the last video. Drawings. Am I wrong? And this is a list of people here. We mentioned, including himself, yeah, and of course Green Street. Even though I know he's been very, very negative about this, I still liked it and I retweeted it because I thought I just said I wanted to be there. I think it's nice. It's good these people do this sort of thing, even though Green Street doesn't agree. Not that I really respect the opinion of a man who shares a hairdresser with a certain mid-20th century leader of a Central European nation. But anyway, I still follow him though. But this is the UFO deception. He's a real backslapper and a massive skeptic, but I still follow him. Goodness knows I must be a sucker for punishment. Anyway, that's it, guys. So what can I say? Yeah, people expect miracles. You see, I have a reputation of being an optimist. I look on the bright side of everything, not just in the UFO field, but generally. I don't think I'm a mindless optimist in denial of reality. I think I'm a rational person. And I think in situations like this, we have good reason to be hopeful. I think because if you throw this particular hearing into the backdrop of the election that happened the week before, the fact that we now have a new president who is very different, he's going to run a very different administration to the last one. I think why shouldn't we look on the bright side and look forward, look at the future with optimism? I mean, it's basically, I think it's better. Generally, it's better to be an optimist than a pessimist, because if you're an optimist and you're proved wrong, yeah, you can be proved wrong. Sometimes you are wrong, you feel disappointed. But if you're a pessimist and you're proven wrong, Stephen Greenstreet, Mick West, all the backslappers, you miss out on all the fun. You uninvite yourself from the party. Now, it has felt in the past like the heady energy of the post-2017 world was being undone. It was being subverted. It was being pulled apart. I mean, we always knew there would be a backlash. It was inevitable there'd be some kind of backlash. And I know our expectations got high after 2017. There was the Schumer amendment including terms that you would never imagine seeing in government bureaucratic screeds: non-human intelligence, technology of unknown origin. And in fact, Gary Heseltine of UFO Truth magazine called it disclosure in all but name. Well, we've heard those same words today, despite the repeal of the Schumer amendment and the fact with Schumer is now on the cabinet. Trump is offering him a job. I can't remember what it is, but he's offering him a job in the executive. His bill was neutered during its congressional reading twice, 2 years running. The four most important provisions were repealed, and it was entered onto statute a pale husk of its former self. And the chief culprits of this political vandalism were, of course, the two Mikes. That's what they've become known as. They become known as the two Mikes. Basically, it's Congressman Michael Turner and Congressman Michael Rogers. Now, what do those two guys have in common? Their campaigns were partly funded by defense contractors like Lockheed Martin. There's a citation for that if you want it. So as far as I'm concerned, this is as good as a confession of what I mentioned Stanton Friedman earlier. People like, well, all of us, we conspiratorial ufologists have been saying this for decades. There are government secrets about UFOs that the military-industrial complex is a part of. Now, if what I've been talking about in this video is some terrible folly, and Mick West is right and Stephen Greenstreet are right, this is what they insist, these skeptics and these backslappers, then why all this effort to halt the transparency process? If we're really fooling ourselves, why do these bureaucrats not just leave it in peace to gather dust? Why don't they just smirk through the reading and the vote and then laugh about it in the bar afterwards? Why not just leave it in peace to gather dust, like so many other useless pieces of legislation? Now, it could be we're finding a way through this gridlock. Obviously, this wasn't big D disclosure today, but this gridlock has been generated by all the secrecy. It's obvious. Now, there's several ways out of it. One of them is that another nation could come clean. It was even discussed in the hearing that China, Russia, maybe other nations have the same information and they're keeping it secret in the same way. I personally believe there's a global policy in place. The presence of the UFO phenomenon is known all over the world, probably to the majority of state actors. Now, during the Cold War, those actors tended to make significant moves only with clearing it first with the boss, that is the United States or the USSR. Those days are over, as the committee member said. The Cold War's over, and in this new multipolar world, nations tend to be more self-assertive. They may choose to speak openly about it in their own UFO experiences without approval from the international community, or possibly referring to another country first, like Brazil or China, who have their own possible motives for disclosing. Of course, Brazil, site of the Virginia incident. So the needle is shifting, to quote Elizondo. But most of it is out of sight, behind the scenes. On a recent episode of Bryce Zabel and Ross Coulthardt's show, Need to Know, Ross explains how, as a journalist, he cannot always publish all the information he has. People keep asking questions about what he has so far only hinted at, like the giant UFO buried under a building because it's too big to move. But he can't answer. Just like Shellenberger, journalists can't just give you everything. And he addresses this issue of what he calls UFO fatigue. Because there are people who are just running out of patience and leaving the UFO scene altogether. Some of them become backslappers, like Stephen Cambion. Others just lose, say they're not going to talk about it anymore, like Kurt Joy-Mungle. And Coulthardt's response is very blunt and it's very typically Australian. Disclosure is not some kind of entertainment set up for the benefit of UFO Twitter. It is a serious, crucial process that sometimes has to be done privately in the background. We, journalists and social media users, are not always entitled to be told every single thing that's going on as and when it happens. I mean, at the end of the day, I still think, I think my certainty has been dampened slightly, but I still think the the most likely potential outcome of this is known by what has become a buzzword. There's lots of buzzwords that have emerged in the last few years, you know, ontological shock, for example. And this is one of them, and it is, of course, catastrophic disclosure. Now, that's not a term I like, as I said to Steve Bassett, and he said so, because it's vague and it's ambiguous and it sounds very negative. It sounds catastrophic. It sounds like it's unwanted, a disaster, a mishap. But all it refers to, as I understand it, is that a person on the inside approaches the media or the UFO research community of his or her own volition and reveals what they know outside the official flow of information. And that's essentially what Larry Warren did in 1983, when he felt it necessary to tell the truth about the Rendlesham Forest incident. He made this personal decision and he took the information to the media himself. There must be people briefed into the truth embargo who are unhappy with its deception and its effects. And indeed, they've even been talked about at events like this. We've seen good examples. David Grush, for example. How long will it be before someone else decides to follow in Grush's footsteps or Elizondo's footsteps? And if the government is being tied down by corruption in the legislature, he or she might choose to take the matter into their own hands. There's a possible example which I've talked about in a previous video, which was actually published in the British press. A guy called Frank Milburn was interviewed. He's a former member of the British Army's elite parachute regiment, and he spoke to another former member of UK Special Forces in their network, their community, who claimed to have taken part in the retrieval of crashed non-human craft. Now, I wonder if it's connected to the human mutes and NATO that Richard D. Hall talked about, because this allegedly took place in the north of England in the late 80s. Now, I know from looking into it, it's got nothing to do with the Mansfield incident, which is the East Midlands. The contact swore to Milburn on the honour of his service that it was true. The incident involved a biologic which supposedly fled the scene on foot, and I wonder what happened to it, where it went. So efforts are continuing to find out more about this witness and hopefully persuade him to go public. In my view, something like this is by far the most likely scenario that breaks the impasse. And catastrophic disclosure, I'll use the word, don't care, that's how it's known conventionally, even though I don't like the term. It could come at any time, from anybody, anywhere. And those in the authorities who fear such catastrophic disclosure have only themselves to blame by closing off all the lawful avenues and leaving wildcat exposure the only option. Surely nobody seriously thought that there were not reactionaries inside the program who would not become active after the 2017 revelations and the subsequent developments. I mean, there's always going to be people who, like Nancy May said, want to stop this happening, want to stop us asking questions, try to prevent this hearing from taking place. The truth embargo will not go quietly, but it will go. And I think maybe, just maybe, we've seen a part of that. We may have seen just a moment, just a short moment, in which, so I'm just going through my notes when I'm talking, a part of that secrecy broke down. We just took a step towards the end of that secrecy breaking down. I'll just end by showing you two websites I very much recommend. Paradigm Research Group, prg.org, and there's Danny Sheehan's group. What's it called? On NPI. Yeah, and I'm just going to show you these before I go. A new Institute, the New Paradigm Institute. Here we go. So yeah, just check. Obviously, my own Hapanmo site is an excellent resource. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. But the New Paradigm Research Group by Stephen Bassett and the New Paradigm Institute. This is Danny Sheehan's. This is Steve Bassett's. But basically, they work very closely together. So, ladies and gents, this video is long enough already. I may do a live stream on this subject depending on what kind of comments I get. All right, if I get lots of very interesting comments, I might do a live stream maybe early next week, possibly, or maybe even on Sunday or something. In the meantime, it's 2 days. You see, I couldn't have done this on Wednesday evening. No way. I could have done it. It wouldn't be half as good because I'd have been tired and I've been, I want to get this over with. So, with no further ado, thank you all for watching Hapanmo TV. Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity. Stop the New World Order.